temperature suddenly dropped and everyone was freezing. In the middle of the apocalypse, he ran into his coworker from the office. Even though he wants to warm up with her, she would just be a burden, so he was going to leave. But after she said a few words, he decided to help her. Looks like this time the meat didn't fall onto the vegan's plate. He works in an office. His boss is an asshole and humiliates him every day. At least his hot friend is by his side. From the outside, it feels like she wants something, but doesn't know how to ask. Suddenly it got cold. On their phones, they saw the world was going crazy. The temperature suddenly drops, and it even snows in Africa. Now there's water there, even if it's frozen. He needs to go back to work, but the elevator doesn't work. So he takes the stairs, almost freezing. It's times like this that our little guy curls up from the cold. When he gets there, there's no light in the office, just weird metal noises. Suddenly a zombie walks into the room wanting to talk to him, but he runs away and locks his coworker outside. An emergency message says a virus has spread. Now humans are eating other humans to fill their bellies. The truth is that days ago, a system showed up for him, selling things to deal with zombies. Even though it seemed weird, he thought he was hallucinating. Suddenly, even the internet stops working. The temperature is already lower than Alaska, so he goes up the stairs using his phone flashlight. He finds clean clothes and changes, just in case he runs into the girl again. Gotta stay clean, right? He also finds a backpack full of supplies and a blanket, and in the manager's office, something that can be used as a weapon. It's been 3 days since the cold arrived, and things don't seem to be getting better. The only possible rescue is by helicopter, and it doesn't look like it's happening. In the system, he sees a coat for sale, but he doesn't have money for anything, so he ends up falling asleep, depressed. Suddenly he wakes up to a noise at the door. He quickly gets up with his golf club, but when he opens the door, it's not a zombie he sees. He actually recognizes the man, who explains he escaped through the emergency door to get there. But when the man asks if he has food, our protagonist lies, saying no, then says he'll go get some water. But the man grabs his arm with a strange look, questioning if that's true. Ginseng got suspicious of the situation. In the bathroom while filling the bottle, he remembered the man was sweating, even in all that cold, but again, he thinks it's just paranoia. Suddenly he's attacked by a zombie, but he hits it with his bottle and kicks its ribs. Only then he realizes it was the man from earlier and is shocked because he was fine just moments ago. Then Jin-song grabs his club and starts massaging his coworker's head. If he had headaches before, he doesn't anymore. With that, the system tells him he earned 1 coin. That was sudden. But when checking the man's arm, he found out how he got infected. Going back to the office, he was deep in thought until he heard a noise. Looking out the window, he saw a man alone fighting several zombies, but he couldn't last long, and soon was violently overrun by the zombies, becoming one of them in seconds. 3 days passed, and the phone battery is already a distant memory. He spends all his time just staring out the window to save as much power as possible. During that time, he sees a bunch of people trying to escape, but every single one of them ends up turning into a zombie. But even with all that, he realizes he needs to get out of there, because just sitting around will only bring him closer and closer to dying. So if possible, he wants to find other survivors he can actually trust inside the building. He decides his target will be the 6th floor, because he needs to check if the entrance is blocked like Kim Ju-man said. Suddenly, the lights in the place turn on, and the young guy runs to the windows thinking everything's back to normal. But the whole city was completely dark, crushing Jin-sung's hopes. He figures someone must have turned on the emergency generator. As he moves forward, he keeps thinking the lights could go out again at any moment, so he needs to find the other survivors before that happens. He assumes whoever did it is probably in the admin office or the security office, both on the 1st floor. Before heading down any further, he takes off his shoes so he won't draw attention. Soon after, Jin-sung reaches the 6th floor and decides to take a quick peek, and notices there's a room blocked from the inside. Seeing that makes him happy. Now he's sure there really are other survivors in the building, but for the moment, he decides to back off. He thinks about how, apparently the zombies outside still haven't gotten in. But considering what the lobby's like, there's a huge chance there are some undead down there. Still, when he opens the door to the 1st floor, he runs straight into a horde of zombies. He admits he kind of expected escaping the building wouldn't be that easy. Even though he's relieved the monsters outside haven't gotten in, Jin-sung knows it's only a matter of time before the doors get smashed. Without wasting time, he decides to get out of there fast. After a while, when he reaches the management office, he finds a coworker who'd always been really nice to him already dead. Looking at the condition he's in, Jin-sung concludes the guy froze to death. Out of respect, he closes the man's eyes and hopes he can rest in peace. After that, Jin-sung heads to the security office to look for survivors. But before going in, he worries they might have set traps. So he knocks on the door really softly so he won't attract the zombies. Suddenly, the door opens before he even tries to go in. A guy comes out and tries to attack him, but Jin-sung manages to block it with his bat. Because of the noise, the zombies get drawn in. Even though he's nervous, the guy with glasses yanks Jin-sung inside and slams the door shut. After that, the two of them confirm neither one is a zombie. Jin-sung explains he came because the emergency generator turned on and he figured there had to be another survivor. To calm him down, Jin-sung introduces himself properly. The other guy says he's also from the development team, and his name is Choi Jae-sung. At first, Jin-sung worries the guy might be infected like Kim Ju-man, but he isn't sweating like the old man was. Jin-sung wonders if he'd been in the break room, because he seems pretty chilled, like literally. Then he thinks that the fact the guy has enough self-control probably means he isn't infected. So Jin-sung tries to reassure Jae-sung, but he still keeps backing away. Jin-sung starts wondering what he can do to break the ice. Then he thinks maybe offering him a cigarette would help, and asks if he wants one. At first, Jae-sung hesitates, but then he takes it. After a bit, he says he finally feels alive again. Jin-sung says he totally gets it, given the situation. It's one of the few comforts they've got. Right after that, Jin-sung mentions he's only eaten half a chocolate bar, and the other survivor starts digging through his backpack. Jin-sung assumes he grabs some bars from the break room, but Jae-sung pulls out a dry instant ramen pack and warns him that eating too fast can mess up his stomach. Since he's from the dev team, Jin-sung asks if he took everything from the 2nd floor, and Jae-sung says yeah, because there's no point keeping food in the fridge anymore. They both start laughing, admitting it's true. Then Jinsung asks how things were on the second floor, and Four Eyes says it's really bad. Jaesung says he got stuck in the break room with a coworker, and they split the food in half, but his coworker kept insisting they move, even though Jaesung thought it was better to wait for help. In the end, the guy couldn't take it anymore, left the room, and got infected almost immediately. Jinsung says it looks like there are a lot of zombies around, and Jaesung says he confirmed at least 4. After a while, Jaesung had no choice but to leave where he was, because his battery was almost dead. To get away, he had to throw something in the opposite direction to distract them. Jinsung compliments him for managing to escape 4 zombies safely. Jinsung asks if he was the one who turned on the emergency generator, and the guy says yeah because he needed to charge his stuff. The main character wonders if that thing is even useful, and Four Eyes is surprised he's been surviving without using the internet. The kid says that either way there's no signal, but the other guy mentions satellite internet. Right after that he explains there aren't many servers you can actually use, but there are still a few communities you can talk to. Then the kid's phone connects to the network. He manages to get on social media, and he thanks him for the help. Suddenly they hear a noise, and Jinsung says it looks like the emergency generator was running out of power. The guy changes the subject, and asks what the main character is going to do now, since he's staying there. Hearing that, the kid figures the guy clearly doesn't want him around, and he doesn't blame him. Last thing he needs is someone else eating his food while he waits to be rescued. The kid tells him he's going to head out because he wants to keep exploring. To help him out, Jinsung hands him a flashlight and a portable charger. Jinsung is really happy because if the power goes out, those would be super useful. To pay him back, the main character gives him a few cigarettes so he can take the edge off. After that, the kid decides to leave, and Jinsung wishes him good luck. On the way out, the kid sees a bunch of zombies, but they're distracted and don't even notice him. When he gets to the stairs, he thinks about going down to the garage and grabbing his car to get out of the building. But he gives up on that because he doesn't think leaving the company right now is a good idea. So he decides to go up a few floors to get more info, and only then try to escape. Suddenly the lights go out, but he stays calm because now he has a flashlight. He starts moving slowly, since the zombies might have moved since last time. After that, he climbs several floors and thinks there might be someone on the next one, but he doesn't know if it's a person or a zombie, so he grabs his golf club and decides to go in anyway. Going up a bit more, he finds out it was a woman who turned into a zombie. Jaesung thinks maybe he can use her being distracted to attack her, but the undead notices him and lunges at him. Still, he manages to defend himself, slamming her into the wall. Even so, she doesn't quit and keeps coming, and this time, he hits her and makes her smash into the step, but the zombie is still moving. So with his club all bent up, he finishes her off. After that, Jaesung gets another coin like last time. He starts wondering where that zombie even came from, since the roof was locked. He figures the 7th floor probably isn't safe either. Right after, he finds a spot to rest and drink some water. He thinks about how that last zombie was really fast, moving more like a wild animal. He admits that if there were more than one, he'd get taken out easily. So he needs to find other survivors or make sure fights stay one-on-one. After that, he checks the internet, but all he finds are people complaining about the temperature. He gets annoyed there's no new info about the zombies, just survivors crying and begging for rescue. So Jinsung assumes the government has basically collapsed. He starts feeling hopeless because it looks like he'll have to survive alone in a world God has abandoned. On the 5th day, the cold gets even worse. To keep from freezing to death, he gets up and does exercises to warm himself up. But that makes him really hungry, and he needs to eat more calories. Then Jinsung takes off his shoes to explore, because they just get in the way and make noise. He heads out to find proper food before things get worse. Outside, he thinks that based on what Jinsung said, half the food from the break room should still be in his zombified coworker's bag. The problem is there are probably more than 4 zombies, and there's no way to grab the bag without the others noticing. Jinsung decides the only way to get it is to separate them one by one. Then he starts mapping out where all the zombies are, but he can't find the last one. He decides to deal with that later and goes looking for tools to fight the monsters. Next, he goes into a room that seems empty. Inside, he finds non-food supplies. Suddenly, he hears a zombie in the hallway, grabs a cup and throws it to get its attention. The zombie takes the bait perfectly, and the main guy takes the chance to smack him in the head. Because of the noise, more zombies get drawn in, but Jinsung manages to shut the door before they can get inside. The kid's happy, since his plan worked perfectly. Without noticing, his leg gets grabbed and it's that same undead he hit earlier. It tries to bite his heel, but he stops it by stomping on its head. After that, the protagonist grabs his golf club and finishes the job. Then he turns his attention to the other 2 at the door. Jinsung decides to end this once and for all before even more zombies get pulled over there. So he breaks the door's window and tosses a spoon to use as a distraction. One of the zombies runs straight toward it, leaving the other one alone. The kid opens the door and grabs what he'd set aside. Meanwhile, the undead that got lured by the spoon hears a noise and goes to check it out, but it ends up tripping and gets taken out by the protagonist. And now Jinsung has a total of 4 coins. Looking at the condition of his club, the kid says there's no way he can keep using it. After that, he finally manages to grab the backpack full of supplies, but either way, he doesn't have any weapons left. So he wonders if he should explore the place, since Jaesung and his coworker probably didn't go anywhere besides the break room. And he's happy because just in development team 1, he scored a portable charger and even nutritional supplements. So he thinks maybe it's a good idea to ride that momentum and check out team 2. Suddenly he hears a noise, assumes it's another zombie and freaks out because now he's got nothing to defend himself with. So he decides to just run for it. Somewhere else he jokes that he never thought he'd feel safe in an office, especially in a situation like this. Right after that, he decides to check what he managed to get, and inside the backpack there's a ton of food. Jaesung feels relieved, because it should be enough to last another month. But he still hasn't solved everything, because he's still suffering from the cold. Before dealing with that though, he decides to clean the grime off his body. While he's washing up, he complains about how cold the water is. Then he notices a wound on his heel, and wonders if it was caused by that zombie earlier. Still, he doesn't worry too much, because he thinks you have to actually get bitten to turn into one of them. He goes online and confirms the theory, since someone got scratched by a zombie and nothing happened, even after days. Jae-sung gets up, relieved, but there's still a problem. He needs a way to warm up his feet. He opens the shop window and finds a set of winter clothes. Seeing the price of each piece, he gets pissed. He knows he doesn't have a choice, and decides to buy the boots. As he puts them on, he's surprised they fit perfectly, and wonders if they were custom made. Right after that, Jae-sung wonders if there's anything else, because boots won't be enough. So he starts looking around the shop and suddenly finds something interesting, buying it right away. It's a pack of wet wipes, and it makes him feel more human again. On day 7, the water apparently gets shut off too. Luckily, he'd stored about 2 liters beforehand, already expecting something like this. Still, that'll only last about 3 or 4 days. After that, he lies down thinking it's messed up that the water got cut off right when he was starting to feel alive again. While browsing online, he sees a bunch of people saying they think the government abandoned everyone. Somewhere else, a guy posts that he's getting ready to head to a small convenience store to look for supplies. He says he'll tell everyone how it went if he survives. Still lying there, the protagonist thinks about how the number of new posts has been dropping little by little, so he assumes most people are probably already gone. He gets up and realizes he can barely see any signs of survivors through the window. But Jin-sung refuses to believe everyone's dead because there's gotta be someone hiding somewhere just like him. On the 8th day, that guy who went to the convenience store still hasn't posted anything. He understands that even though he still has water and food, he can't stay there forever. But for that, he'll need more survivors, some allies, because leaving the building alone is basically suicide. The main issue right now is that he needs to be armed to move around. But the kid only has one more golf club, which is gonna end up being useless after you take down like 3 zombies. Jin-sung finds the perfect hammer in the shop, but it costs 5 coins, and with that money he could buy warmer clothes instead. Right after that, he decides to grab his last bat and check out the other floors. He gets to a wrecked room and starts wondering why there's nobody there. The bloodstains look like they've been there a while. All of a sudden, he starts catching that zombie smell, but it's weird because there aren't any bodies. Then he tries to open a door, but it's locked. He wonders if someone's hiding on the other side, even though he can't hear anything. So Jin-sung decides to smash the lock with his bat. When he gets through the door, he finds a pile of zombies stacked up. He's shocked because it would have taken at least 10 people to do something like that. After that, he thinks that if those people teamed up with him, he'd have nothing to worry about. But he gets disappointed because there's nothing useful there. Looks like the place was already picked clean. Then he goes to grab some coffee and starts wondering if those people are still in the building. Suddenly, Jin-sung notices a piece of paper stuck behind the machine. It's a letter from whoever cleared out that floor. In it, the guy says he's leaving the building on the 8th day after the outbreak to head to an island on the west coast, since it sounds like a good place to stay safe from zombies. Jin-sung gets annoyed because that survivor left the building just 1 day before he showed up. Then he realizes the guy from the letter is an old acquaintance who used to brag about being ex-special forces. He also notices there's something written on the back of the letter, saying he left a gift in the drawer. When he opens it, Jin-sung finds a few tokens for the coffee machine, and it actually makes him smile. The next day, he rereads the letter and sees a warning: avoid the 5th floor. He wonders why, because logically, it doesn't seem like that floor would be packed with zombies, but the guy doesn't seem like the type to warn someone for no reason. Then he thinks about how it's been a long time since he's seen even a single survivor, and the more time passes, the lower his chances get of finding anyone to team up with. So he decides to search the other floors, since he already missed one chance to find someone. Suddenly, a flash of light fills the room and hits him right in the face, and he panics thinking someone's signaling him. When he looks at the building next door, he sees someone. The guy tries to communicate with Jin-sung, but he can't make anything out because it's too far. So he gets the idea to use his phone's zoom. On the sign, the person says there are people on the 6th and 7th floors, and there's one more guy with him. Jin-sung gets excited finding out there are more survivors in his building, and decides he'll deal with the 2 in the other building later. He grabs his bat and heads out to find potential allies. When he gets to the floor, he remembers the entrance used to be blocked, and wonders if they cleared it now, so he doesn't get mistaken for a zombie. He yells out who he is and says he's not hostile. Then he notices the entrance looks like it was forced open, judging by the mess, and he starts wondering if someone got there before him. All of a sudden, a zombie tries to jump him, but he blocks it with his bat. Right after that, he kicks the undead back. Then he grabs a table and finishes the job, earning more money. After that, Jin-sung starts looking for where the other survivors are and wonders if he got played. Then the doorknob behind him starts moving. He walks up and says again he's not there to hurt anyone. Inside, the person is holding the door shut, shaking. Jin-sung adds that he works there too, he's part of the sales team. Then he says if they don't answer, he'll have to break the door down. Just as he's about to, the door opens and it's Asura. They sit down to talk, and Jin-sung's surprised she's been on that floor the whole time. She says that last night someone came begging her to open the door, but she got a bad feeling and decided not to help, and the guy must have realized she was alone and tried to force his way in. Seeing that, Asura went to hide in the break room, and in less than an hour, the guy had already turned into a zombie. After that, the main character gets curious about whether the girl had anything to defend herself with, and she says she's got a wooden spear. She explains she grabbed a mop and sharpened it with a box cutter, turning it into something insanely useful. Seeing blood on the tip of the spear, the guy assumes she's probably already dealt with zombies. Right after that, he thinks about how in a world like that, a woman is at a huge disadvantage, because besides being hunted by zombies, she's also a target for other people. After that, the guy stands up to leave, but the girl grabs his arm, totally shocked, saying she's alone in there, and there's no way she can handle this by herself. Still, Jin-sung apologizes because he can't help. But before he leaves, Sang-ah says she's trained in fencing, and also reveals she's the one who took out all the zombies on the 6th floor. With that, she tells him he's going to regret not teaming up with her. Hearing all that, the main character is speechless, and then the two of them form an alliance. Next, she shows him a backpack with all the clothes and food she managed to find. The guy asks if she has a portable charger, and she says no, because they're useless, so Jin-sang tells her about satellite communication. After that, he starts wondering how many zombies there are in total. She tells him there are 8 undead, which makes him feel relieved they teamed up. After grabbing a few more chargers, the girl asks if they can go now, but the guy notices some marks on the door. Sang-ah says that was caused by the guy trying to break into the room. So Jin-sang decides to look around more and finds a parking meter. He gets excited, because he needed something to defend himself with, even if the downside is that it's pretty short. Suddenly the girl says she has an idea. She decides to attach it to her wooden spear. The main character admits it's actually really useful, because he can use it like a spear and also jab people with the parking meter end. After that, he thanks her and thinks it's good having more people around to survive. They both figure they won't have to worry about food for a while, since they've got plenty of supplies now. Jin-sang gets curious about where she even got a frying pan. Shin-sang says she was planning to return it because she didn't like the color, but she forgot. He says it'll be really useful for melting snow so they can drink the water. Right after that, she asks how he figured out she was in the break room. He says he got info from the building next door. Jin-sang shows her the message and says the other people were suggesting forming a team. She asks if he was on board with that idea. He says he doesn't know because it's risky teaming up with strangers. Shin-sang says she asked to stick with him because she was scared she wouldn't find someone she could trust. And right now, she doesn't want to bring anyone else into the group. Knowing that, he decides they won't team up with anyone. After that discussion, she says she thinks their old manager might still be alive, because on the first day they were together on the 6th floor. But he decided to run. Jin-sang asks when the guy split up from her, and she says it was on the 2nd day. Shin-sang says she thinks Choi is on either the 3rd or the 5th floor. While she sleeps, the main character thinks maybe the people from the other building will team up with the manager and over time come after them. But he decides not to focus on outside stuff he can't control. Then he decides to use his coin to upgrade his cold weather gear. He thinks buying a hat could be really useful, but he worries about buying it and leaving his new partner without something to cover her feet, because if she can't move, she'll end up being dead weight. After that, he realizes he's being selfish and decides to choose later. The next day, he wakes up to her messing with her phone and asks what the battery percentage is. She's surprised to see he's already awake, and he says he can't really rest properly in this cold. Then Jin-sang asks if she charged all the batteries, and she says yes. Sang-ah shows him the phone is at 22%. Since they're talking about it, she asks if he checked whether there's a solar generator on the roof. He basically admits he didn't even know that was a thing. The girl says she was in charge of it for a while, because of a support project tied to a small company. At first, the plan was to install the generator on the roof, but the project got shut down after they found a defect before it ever went on sale. The guy asks if she knows how to run the machine, and she says, yeah, she was the one responsible for the project. Hearing that, he decides it's a good idea to go up there and check it out. So the two of them head up to the roof, which is completely covered in snow. They find a temporary ladder to get up to the generator. Jin-sung tries to pull the ladder down, but it doesn't even budge. The girl says she'll climb up. She just asks him to hold it steady. Right after that, the protagonist gives her a boost so she can get up. Seeing Sung-Mike make it to the top on the first try, he thinks it's probably easier for her since she's an athlete. After that, she finds the generator they were looking for. Luckily, it's not that big, so she's going to take it apart and toss the pieces down to him. Then she starts handing down one panel at a time. After a while, the two of them finally get everything together in one spot. The protagonist wonders if the machine will work well with all those clouds. Sung-Mike explains that if the sun's strong, it can charge about 50% of a phone. A day passes, and the phone only charges 8%. Jin Sung-Mike says there's nothing they can do. The sun never came out. But because of that, he already knows where they're going after they leave the office. He says he means the company warehouse because they didn't just find food there, they also found tools they'll need to survive. And if the car's GPS doesn't work, they'll have to rely on the phone, but its battery isn't in great shape. Sung-Mike says that's not a problem, because the warehouse is close to her house. She says she's seen the building a bunch of times while out on walks. Hearing that, the protagonist is seriously happy he met her. He thinks teaming up with Sung-Mike was a great call. She knows how to do a lot, and she works hard. Then he asks what her shoe size is, because he's thinking of bringing her some boots if they fit. She's really grateful and tells him her size. Jin-sung goes and gets the boots for her, and they fit perfectly. Suddenly a window pops up in front of him saying a group has been formed, and all the members' coins will go straight to him. Seeing that, he figures it's better to get more allies. Still, he doesn't get why it only showed up now, and he wonders if it's because he gave her the boots. Noticing he's spaced out, Sena gets worried about him. Jin-sung says he's just a little dizzy because he hasn't been eating properly the last few days. After that, the two of them decide to go out and look for food. By day 14, they've run out of water, and they're suffering from thirst. He says they need to melt some snow to drink. Sena says she'll grab the papers and documents, and he says he'll make the fire on the roof, since they can't risk starting a fire inside the building. But he worries the smoke outside might attract looters, people who've done some truly horrible stuff. Even knowing that, he decides to light the fire anyway, because they can't take the cold anymore. Sena gets happy and says that with the warmth, she finally feels alive again. Then she takes her frying pan full of snow and puts it over the fire to melt, and they get water. The protagonist gets emotional drinking warm water. With tears in her eyes, the girl says she'd forgotten what warmth felt like, and she's glad they didn't give up, and he agrees, saying they'll make it to the end together. In the morning, Jin-sena gets woken up by her, and he's totally confused. Then she tells him the people in the other building were trying to communicate, and apparently they were heading their way. He asks when she saw the message, and she says it wasn't long ago. Sena says they noticed them and started moving fast. He thinks he can't trust those people, they could be dangerous. When they look over, they see the neighboring group coming out of their building, so the two of them run to pack their stuff. Meanwhile, outside, the group is fighting the zombies in a really methodical way, and if they keep up that pace, they'll reach the two of them in 15 minutes tops. Jin-senang and his coworker have already packed up all their stuff. Out on the street, those guys start running when a bunch of undead show up, and one of them grabs his sledgehammer and smashes the building's window so they can get in. While they're escaping, the main guy sees Siana on the ground and worries she's falling behind. She asks if they're really going to leave the panels, because without them they won't have electricity, and he tells her survival comes first. So she admits he's right and starts running again. But it doesn't take long before they hear a noise and realize the intruders are getting close. Jin-sung hesitates, not sure if they should go downstairs or up to the roof. He thinks if they go up and it turns into a long fight, they'll be at a disadvantage because of the cold. So he and his coworker decide to block off the entrance to the 6th floor and wait to see what happens. Meanwhile, the intruders start coming up the stairs and the main guy realizes they're getting closer and closer. Siana doesn't get what's going on and he explains that it looks like the men are searching for other survivors. The intruders keep climbing higher and higher. Jin-sung tells her to get ready, but nothing happens. Siana can tell something's off. Suddenly the building shakes, but nothing happens to the two of them. She wonders if it was an explosion and he says it looks like it was. He starts wondering why they'd use explosives when they know it's only 2 people. Then he remembers the person from the letter warning him not to go to the 5th floor, and the manager's face pops into his head. So he removes the barricade they made and tells Siana they're going down. She asks if it's safe, and he says if he's right, then yeah. Downstairs, they find the place completely wrecked. Jin-sung tells her not to let her guard down. Then they come across something straight out of a horror movie. A bunch of people dead on the floor. He moves forward and tells her to wait there. He finds a door that's been busted open. Inside, he hears someone sounding really pissed off, and he recognizes the voice. It's Manager Choi, talking to himself about how he didn't have a choice, which makes Jin-sung think he caused that explosion earlier. Jin-sung calls out to him and Choi smiles when he sees his former employee. But Jin-sung freaks out because the guy is missing his lower half. Choi starts crawling, begging to be saved, saying he doesn't want to die like this. Jin-sung is just stunned. Siana shows up saying she heard the manager's voice. Choi perks up when he sees her and asks if she still remembers him. Jin-sung apologizes, saying they're not doctors and they don't have any medicine to help. Choi panics, saying he wants to live and that there's a way. Then he says that if he turns into a zombie, he'll keep living. He begs them to take him down to the 1st floor so he can meet the undead. But Jin-sung apologizes again, they can't do that. Hearing that, Choi loses it, calling them ungrateful because he's the one who stopped the looters from getting to them. Then he accuses Sone of sleeping with Jin-sung and planning to survive with just the 2 of them. After that, he turns to her and says it looks like she already replaced him with someone else. But before he can keep talking nonsense, he gets killed. Outside, Jin-sung says it looks like those people really were looters. But Sone barely reacts, she's still in shock. Seeing her like that, he tells her the manager was going to die either way. And honestly, killing him early probably spared him a lot of suffering, since he likely would have died from blood loss anyway. He tells her she has no reason to feel guilty. She brings up the idea of turning him into a zombie, but Jin-sung says if they went that route, they'd still end up putting him down anyway. And she admits he's right. After a while, they look out the building window and realize there are even more undead outside. On the internet, people are only talking about the explosion from the day before, which ended up drawing a bunch of hordes to the area. Jin-sung gets frustrated because all that attention is just going to attract even more looters on top of the zombies, which are already a huge problem. Over time, the zombies had spread out again, but most of them were still there, and it was probably impossible to even walk through the lobby. Right after that, the main guy says that for now, they need to plan to get out of the building within 2 days at most. Then the boy calls his partner to go check the 1st floor. After that, they grab their flashlights and head down the stairs. All of a sudden, the girl hears something and asks if he heard it too. Jin-sung says it sounded like it was coming from upstairs. Peeking through the crack in the door, they spot a zombie. Sana feels sick, thinking it might be Manager Choi turned into a zombie. The boy says that's impossible because they hit the guy in the head so he wouldn't come back infected. Then she thinks maybe it's one of the looters, but the main guy shuts that down too, saying they hadn't turned when they went up to the 5th floor. After that, Jin-sung figures it must be a survivor from the 3rd floor they never found, or just some random undead that got in through a window. But the 2 of them decide to go with the first option instead of zombies that climb. When they reach the 1st floor, they crack the door open a bit and are met with a massive horde of zombies in the lobby. Seeing that, the main guy is stunned, thinking the situation is way worse than he expected. Then he notices the security room and wonders how Jae-sung is doing, because if he's still in there, he's probably already aware there are zombies outside. So the boy shuts the door and tells his partner it'd be insane to try to leave that way. Sona suggests going through the underground parking garage. The guy says that last time there were some monsters down there and decides to go check what it's like now. When they get to the parking garage, they don't find many zombies. She says it looks like there are about 10, and he says that's already better than the lobby. Seeing how many cars were left behind, the boy says they've got plenty of vehicles they can use as cover, and since there's no wind down there, they can move through quickly without the zombies catching their scent. He asks if she can see the reflection in the convex mirror up above. She says she can't see clearly because of her eyesight, but then she adjusts her angle and says she can see the entrance that connects the passage to the 1st floor. Jin-sung says that's enough, and calls her to head back up to the 7th floor. Up there, Song says it'd be way better if they could get around using the cars, but the main guy explains the cars have been sitting in the cold for a long time, so the batteries might be dead. After that, they go back to planning a route to leave on foot. Some time passes, and it's minus 35 Trupringors, with 5 hours left before they're supposed to leave the building. Even lying back to back, the girl notices the guy can't sleep. Jin-sung asks if it was really that obvious, and she says he's been tossing and turning non-stop. He admits he's thinking about his friend on the 1st floor, and Song says he can come with them. But the boy says no, if he does that, he could put her in danger too. Still, it sucks, because Jin-sung is someone he trusts. Pretty quickly, he changes his mind and asks if it's okay for his friend to come with them, and she says she's fine with it. Jin-sung gets up, saying he's going to use his phone. Then he tells Jin-sung that if he wants to get out of the building, he should go to the 1st floor emergency exit. In the morning, the main guy doesn't get any reply. Even feeling discouraged, he decides to believe his friend is already at the meeting spot, waiting for them. But when they get to the 1st floor, there's no one there, and Songs asks if they should wait a little longer. Still, they head down to the parking garage because they can't wait anymore. Down there, they find a zombie that wasn't there before. Jinsong tells her to stick to the original plan. As they sneak along behind the cars, the girl says the dead just keep wandering around the same spots, but some of them are still just standing there. Then a zombie blocks them from moving forward. The main guy stands up and stomps on the ground to get its attention. The creature hears the noise and charges at him. But before it can reach him, Song-ah stabs a zombie with her spear. Because of that kill, the boy gets another coin, since she's in his group. Right after that, the two of them manage to reach the building's exit. The girl suggests they head to a place called Chonggae, because zombies can't climb its stairs. As they walk through the snowstorm, Song-ah says they're not making progress like she expected, but her partner insists this is still the best route. Soon they can already see where they're headed, but they'll have to move carefully, because there are tons of zombies along the way. So they start inching forward, but then out of nowhere the wind picks up hard, which is really bad because it'll carry their scent. The zombies in the area catch the smell of humans and start sprinting toward them. Sana freaks out, not knowing what they're supposed to do. Jin-song thinks they can't go to Chonggae because the zombies would just fall down the stairs and end up drawing even more attention. So he figures they should get into some building, but which one? The open buildings are already packed with zombies, and the closed ones would make too much noise if they tried to break in. She tells him they need to decide. Now. Then they spot a bus right next to them. They both try to force the door open, but nothing happens. Jin-song asks if they should just smash it, but Jin-song tells her to give him a second. He uses the spear to make a lever and manages to pry it open. Seeing the zombies getting closer, he tries to shut the entrance fast. He tries using the keys he found on the bus to lock the doors. Both of them are basically praying it works. A second later, the zombies reach the door, but Jin-song reacts fast and takes one out with her spear. Still, more of them are already crowding the entrance, and the two of them are getting more and more desperate to get out of there. Then, at the perfect moment, the bus starts working again, and Jin-song floors it, knocking his teammate over. He tells her to hold on tight. The bus heads straight toward a building, and Jin-song tries to steer, but nothing happens. He realizes it's because the streets are frozen and the tires are sliding. Trying to avoid a full-on crash, he swerves, but ends up scraping the building anyway. The bus stops and he thinks at least the door's blocked. But now the noise has attracted the zombies, and they surround the vehicle. Sana says they need to lure the dead away, but Jin-song points out that only works if someone goes outside. He gets frustrated, because if more zombies pile up, they could actually tip the bus over. He refuses to believe this is how it ends. Suddenly, a trash bin nearby gets smashed, and it grabs the creature's attention. Inside the bus, the two of them breathe a sigh of relief. They made it. Sana says there are still a few zombies close by, but they'll probably fall off on their own. Then she says whatever smashed the trash bin fell from a nearby building, probably from the second or third floor. She gets excited, thinking it might be a survivor who's still human. Then they spot a woman waving from a window. Sana notices she's holding binoculars. So Sana uses her phone to thank her for the help earlier, and the other survivor gives a thumbs up. Sana says there are still good people in that world. Then he adds that he'd love to give those people some noodles. Sana asks if they don't have any, and he says he ate it all before he even met her. Hearing that, she cracks up, like she can't believe he actually did that. Then she says there should be instant noodles at the logistics warehouse. Night finally falls, and the cold hits them even harder than usual. Sana asks if she's okay, because her face looks pale. Looking at how bad things are, he says those thin glass windows clearly aren't enough to keep the cold out. Sana tries to reassure him, saying she's fine, but he notices her lips are blue, and she's shaking worse than before. He says they need to warm up, or their movement's gonna get messed up. Sana wonders if there's any way besides making a fire. Jin-san thinks for a second, and decides they're making a fire anyway, and she asks if that's even possible. He explains the plan is to make holes in the roof so the smoke can escape, and they don't suffocate because doing it through the windows wouldn't be a good idea, since zombies could break in. Right after that, the girl uses her spear to punch 4 holes in the ceiling, and that way they manage to start a little fire, using some old office papers. All of a sudden, Sana says someone in the community was talking about 2 people on a bus, and she admits she wants to join their group. Realizing they were talking about them, the main guy asks where that user is, and the person says they're upstairs in a convenience store. To be safe, the stranger tells the 2 of them to say what brand the car parked in front of the store is, and they get it right. After that, the user decides to stop beating around the bush and asks to join the group. Jin-song, meanwhile, is curious about what they're supposed to do next. In the morning, some guy wakes up and opens his window to see what things look like outside. But then he sees a zombie climbing up his building. Freaking out, the guy starts throwing basically anything he can find in his apartment. Someone asks if they can do parkour now, and the guy says that zombie looks a lot like his neighbor from the building next door who's always climbing. The other user wonders if that means the undead keep the skills they had when they were alive. Around 9 a.m., Jin-song and his coworker get off the bus. Sino asks what he thinks about what they read in the community earlier, and he says he kind of saw it coming. He explains that at the office, the zombies got in through the hole from the explosion on Manager Choi's floor. Then right at 9, a woman walks out of the building in front of them. Sino gets excited seeing her and even says she's jealous of the woman's warm jacket. But before they can celebrate being a group of 3, the woman gets attacked by a zombie. The 2 of them are stunned watching it happen. Sino realizes more of the dead are being drawn in by the smell, and that if they stay there, that'll be them next. He turns to leave, but his partner is still frozen, so he grabs her arm and tells her they need to go if they want to survive. Even though she's still shaken, she decides to keep moving with him. After a while, they reach the subway entrance, and the woman asks if leaving really is a good idea, because there's a chance there are a bunch of zombies down there, people who were heading home from work before the apocalypse. Then the wind picks up again, so they decide to go down into the subway, but they don't run into any zombies. The only thing they find is people who are already dead. Jin Sinor thinks the number of bodies isn't that high, so the zombies are probably still trapped somewhere down there. Then his coworker taps his shoulder and points at a convenience store, which gets Jin Sinor excited. But that excitement dies fast because the store is empty. Sinor asks if they should check the stockroom. Inside, they find a few cans of beer. Back outside, she says it sucks that the clothing stores have already been looted. Then the guy finds it weird that the phone shop is still untouched. She says they're going to have to walk more than they planned, but it should be around 20 kilometers. And she also says earlier she saw something weird written on a wall and took a picture. In the photo, someone wrote that they don't know what to do in all this chaos. But before they can look at it more, the phone battery dies, so they decide to keep going along the train tracks. They're bothered by how clean it is, there isn't even a rat or a bat. But what really worries Jin Sinong is the lack of bodies, which probably means all the zombies are gathered in one place. Suddenly, he signals for her to stop. He shines his flashlight ahead and finds a train sitting there. They go in to search it, but they don't find anything, not even bodies. Then she finds a box, opens it, and sees a kitchen knife inside. Jin Sinong says he found something interesting in a car earlier too. He shows her a speaker and says they can use it to lure zombies. When they're done searching the train, they decide to head out. Outside, they spot someone in front of them, and it's a zombie. Jin Sinong is shocked because the thing has to be at least 2 meters tall. Sinong recognizes him and says he used to be a pro baseball player before he retired. Nervous, the guy says they should avoid him as much as possible. The two of them start moving slowly, but the monster catches their scent, so the creature charges at the humans, and the main guy tells his partner to take her place in the plan. Right after that, Jin Sinong drives his spear into the zombie's chest, keeping a safe distance. The girl uses the opening to smash the thing in the head with a golf club, but the club snaps from the impact. The undead immediately turns its attention to her. Seeing how strong it is, the main guy is seriously impressed. The creature yanks itself free of the spear and goes straight for Sinong. Luckily, she dodges and stabs the zombie in the head with the sharp, broken end of the golf club. They both comment on how freakishly strong that undead thing is. After that, Jin Song apologizes for not being able to hold it back, but his teammate calms him down, saying there's basically nothing else they could have done in that situation. Sinal wonders if they should attach the sharp metal piece to the spear too. He says it's a great idea since it'll boost the weapon's damage. Then she upgrades the spear like that. The main guy says they've rested a bit already and suggests they start moving again. She gets annoyed, wondering how they found a bunch of trains but basically nothing useful, and he says it looks like someone got there first. Then she says they were almost at a station called Sindang, but suddenly, they hear an explosion. Even though they don't know what it was, he decides they're not going that way. Right after that, the two of them run back. Inside the train, Sinal asks what's going on, and he tells her to stay quiet. He looks out the window and hears a bunch of noise, realizing something's coming. And sure enough, it's zombies heading their way. She asks if they should fight, and he says no, they're just going to wait. Then the undead rush right past the train. She sits down, relieved, but he says it's still not time to relax, because it's not over yet. He starts wondering if they should head toward the station where the horde went, or go the opposite way toward where they heard the explosion. Sinal asks if they should just keep hiding, but he says that's a bad idea, because last time the zombies only didn't enter the car because they were all worked up, and if they were moving slower they'd definitely catch their scent. So she says she'll follow his lead. They decide to backtrack before the zombies figure them out, but they run into a few more undead, and Jin Song decides they need to climb up somewhere safe. He climbs up to the station first, thinking that as long as they're careful they can avoid them. Then he reaches down to pull his partner up, but his hands are sweaty and she slips and falls, getting the zombies' attention. Panicking, he tells her to climb up fast. Songa grabs his hand again and manages to get up onto the platform just in time. But one zombie grabs onto her leg, and she jabs it in the face with the pick, knocking it to the ground. So they decide to get out of there fast. When they try to go up the stairs, they run into another undead. Quickly, the guy ducks down so she can finish it off. As they push forward, they run into a few more threats, but they handle them pretty easily. After that, they finally make it somewhere safe. Jin Song asks what it's like outside, and she says she can't see anything. He breathes a sigh of relief that they're still alive. Then he remembers her leg because she's hurt. Songa says she felt something cut her during the chase. When she realizes what that might mean, she freaks out. But Jin Song's relieved. It's just a scratch, not a zombie bite. Hearing that, she calms down. He says she'll be fine because he's been scratched before and nothing happened. Then she starts crying because she really thought that was the end for her. After that, they use a first aid kit to disinfect the wound. He says they got lucky finding a kit there, since they'd already searched the whole place. Then he tells her to rest for a bit. Meanwhile, he goes back to looking for anything useful, and he ends up finding a mysterious key. He's happy because now he won't have to worry about where he's going to sleep. Still, it's not what he was actually looking for, but it has to be somewhere around there. After that, he finds a diary, and on one of the pages, here's the locker code. So the guy heads over to the safe to open it, and makes it clear to his teammate that he knows exactly what he's doing. Sienna gets curious about how he knew all that, and he tells her he used to work in the subway. And during that time, he learned that people always write down security codes in their diary. She wonders if there's anything special inside the safe, and he says most of the time it's just station keys. But what they're actually looking for is a box with a gun. He explains it was meant to be used in case of robberies or attacks. After that, he hands the box to his partner, and asks her to hold on to it. But Sana refuses, because she's never held a gun in her life, and he says he gets it. Right after that, Jin Song shows her the keys he found earlier, and she asks what they open. He says he thinks they're for a staff room. Then they go to the room and the key unlocks it. When they walk in, they find a zombie sitting on the floor. But Sana checks and realizes it's already dead. After a while, the two of them lie down on a bed, and she feels insanely comfortable. She jokes that if they move again, they're taking the blankets with them, and he asks if that's even possible. She says their food was running out anyway, so their bags had plenty of space. Then she turns over and tells him to get some sleep, since they've been running around all day. In the middle of the night, Jin Song gets up, thinking about how low their food is, and decides they need to reach the warehouse as soon as possible. Staring at the winter clothing kit, he figures they're still going to suffer a lot from the cold. Plus, things underground are getting worse, and if everything goes wrong, they might have to cover ground up on the surface. He realizes he can now afford to buy clothes for himself and his friend, But he also knows he can't decide that right now. Things seem okay for the moment, so he decides to think about it later. After that, he notices he might be able to do an upgrade. In the morning, Song gets woken up by him. He tells her they're moving out immediately. On the train tracks, they find a bunch of vehicles flipped over, and he says it looks like someone did it on purpose. She climbs up onto one of the trucks to check things out, and on the other side, she sees a ton of zombies. Songa rushes back to him, freaked out, saying there have to be hundreds of dead over there. Hearing that, Jin Song suggests trying the other way, but she explains that this is the only line that connects to where they need to go. They sit down to talk it through calmly and consider going over the surface, but quickly realize the wind would give them away to the zombies. So he suggests they search again, because maybe they missed something. After his partner turns away, he opens the tab for a skill called Explorer, which lets you buy items that aren't listed in the shop. He decides to buy it, and the first thing he searches is vaccine. But nothing comes up, so the skill won't be used up. He tries different wording, like zombie antibodies or virus vaccine, but still finds nothing. It frustrates him, but at least he knows he tried. Right after that, he searches for deodorant, and at least that shows up. When he sees it last 90 minutes, he does the math and realizes he'll need to buy at least 3, since their destination is 4 hours away. He gets bummed because he'd been happy saving up coins, and now he's about to spend 3 all at once. Then he goes back to Sidana. She's curious where he found deodorant, and he says he found it on the platform inside a few bags. Sidana asks if it'll really cancel out their smell. He says worst case they can just run back. After that, they spray themselves with the deodorant and head outside. Jin Seneng tells her to keep pace because they might run into something dangerous. And it doesn't take long, they run into an undead. They start wondering if the deodorant is actually working. The zombie turns toward them and they immediately get into a defensive stance, but it just walks right past them. Sidana gets excited because it looks like the deodorant really did work. He says that's going to help them a lot. After a while, she spots a gun shop that's totally untouched, but the guy says that's not a good idea because if there's someone in there, they're definitely armed. The two of them find a sign saying they're near Su's station. Jin Seneng gets bummed out because he thought they'd be closer to Yuidong. With the delay, they decide to split up and look for somewhere to spend the night. Sidana can't find many places with unbroken windows. Meanwhile, the guy only finds locked places with zombies inside. Not long after, they meet up again and tell each other they didn't find anywhere to stay. He says they need a place that isn't full of zombies but is still sealed up enough to keep them out. Then they spot the door to a cafe and decide to check it out. Sana says the area looks bright and seems zombie-free. After that, she tries to open a door, but it's locked. She asks if they should break in, but he doesn't think it's a good idea since it's a glass door. Smashing it could attract the undead. So he steps away, saying there might be another way. He sticks his hand into a hole in the wall and finds a key. Sana gets curious about how he knew, and he says cafes stay open late, meaning there are opening and closing shifts, so keys get handed off a lot, and they usually hide a spare nearby. Inside, they find a bunch of bags of flour. She asks what they're supposed to do with them, and he says to leave them. They're way too heavy to carry. Then he says that at this pace, they should reach the warehouse the next day. Looking discouraged, she asks if he thinks there are already people at the warehouse like there were at the gun shop. He says the chances are pretty high, so she suggests they come up with a code word in case one of them is in trouble. After that, Siana suggests they talk casually as a signal if they find a gun. Jin Seong suggests they speak extra politely if it's a melee weapon. They keep working out their codes, and she says that way their words won't stand out, so it'll sound like a normal conversation. Suddenly, their chat gets interrupted by lightning, and they're shocked because they've never seen lightning while it's snowing. He says it looks like the snow's going to pile up even more, which will make moving around even harder the next day. Right after that, she decides to get some rest. After a while, he wakes up from his nap to a weird noise. When he looks outside, he sees someone riding a motorcycle. Jin Seong wonders why anyone would be out on the street this late at night. Realizing the biker is heading toward the warehouse, he refuses to believe the guy is actually going there. Then a horde of zombies shows up. Seong wakes up asking where they came from, and he explains they were probably drawn in by the motorcycle noise earlier. He gets frustrated because the route is going to be packed with zombies, and she asks what they should do. Jin Seong says there's a chance that guy is purposely leading the horde somewhere, but she points out they don't have enough food to just wait for the zombies to spread out on their own. Suddenly he says maybe there's something online, but some people are just talking about how it's thundering while it's snowing, and others are talking about a rumor that there's a shelter on Yeongjong Island. Still, some people say it's a total lie, because there's a cult there. Another user guesses the shelter is just a setup to steal survivors' supplies. Reading all that, Sena says that's pretty dark. He remembers Hyukjae saying he was heading toward the west side of the sea, and that if they could reach him, they might get some info. So Jin Sane asks his friend to forget that place people mentioned online, and she agrees. After that, they decide to stick to the original plan and go to the logistics warehouse. But if they run into a horde or anything too risky on the way, they'll turn back. They use up their last deodorant sprays and realize they need to move fast. Luckily, there aren't as many zombies in the streets as they expected. Sena says the warehouse must be close. He says the fog is messing with their visibility. And on top of that, the deodorant effect is wearing off, so if they run into a zombie, they'll have to fight. Soon after, she spots their destination. Jin-san is happy when he sees how tall the walls are, because that means they won't have to worry as much about security. The girl tries to open the gates, but they're locked. After that, she realizes those barbed wires weren't there before, so the two of them decide to walk along the wall, looking for a weak spot, and they end up finding a section that looks flimsier than the rest. Sanus quickly says she's going to climb up, but the main guy warns her it's really dangerous, since they have no idea what it's like inside. She says they don't have any other choice. The repellent was wearing off and they needed somewhere to go. Jin Sanus agrees but tells her to be careful because there could be dangerous people on the other side. Then she backs up, gets a running start, and uses him to help her get up onto the wall. She takes a quick look and says she's going to climb down, not realizing someone in the shadows is watching her. Seona jumps to the other side, but before she can even celebrate, someone grabs her and tells her to put her hands up. The person pats her down and finds out she's unarmed. Then he asks where her partner is, and with no other option, she tells him he's outside. So the guy orders her to tell her friend to go to the front gate. Sienna yells for Jinsong to go to the gate, and he immediately realizes something's off. From the way she's talking and using their pre-agreed codes, he figures out there's only one enemy and he's got a gun. So he pulls out his pistol and says he'll go to the gate like he was told. After that, the kidnapper tells him to drop his weapon and come out. Jinsong says he's only got a spear to protect himself and throws it on the ground. Right after that, he starts wondering what to do because his weapon doesn't have much range and he needs to get closer. But the enemy will notice. Then Jinsong tells the kidnapper to let his friend go since he did everything he was told. The guy tells the girl to move. And Jinsong thinks that's perfect because now he'll be close enough to hit him. Once he gets a good distance, Jinsong pops out aiming his gun at the guy. Sienna sees what he's doing and quickly ducks. Both guns go off, but nobody gets hit. Because of the shot, the guy ends up blinded, and in a panic, he starts firing everywhere. Sienna moves fast and takes him down. The guy starts yelling, calling them idiots, and Jinsong tosses Sienna some tape so she can deal with him. Suddenly, Jinsong hears a noise behind him and wonders if it's another enemy, but it's zombies drawn in by the gunshots. He tells Sienna to grab the keys and open the gate, but the kidnapper refuses to cooperate. Jinsong yells that they're running out of time. Sienna gets fed up and kicks the guy to get what she wants. Right after that, she finally gets the keys. While she tries them one by one, Jinsong is basically fighting for his life. One zombie goes for him, but he easily takes it out with a hit to the head. Then another zombie lunges at him, and this time he can't use his spear because it's still stuck in the first one. With no other choice, he drops his weapon and dives to the side. Now he's on the ground, totally exposed. But before anything can happen, the gate swings open and smacks the zombie right in the face. Sienna shows up and signals for him to get inside. Jinsong runs in fast, and she shuts the gate, leaving all the zombies outside. Right after that, they're relieved, because neither of them got hurt. Jinsong suggests they go into the warehouse right away. Sienna wonders what they should do with the guy. Jinsong says they should bring him inside, so she helps him up. And Jinsong is shocked to see it's his friend, Jae-sung. Once they're inside the warehouse, Sienna says she didn't expect to run into someone Jinsong knew like that. Jinsong tells Jae-sung not to rub his eyes with the towel, and Jae-sung says he knows. Still, it really hurts. Then Jae-sung says it's his fault, because he attacked first. Jinsong thanks him for understanding. After that, the former manager offers them tea, and they accept without even thinking twice. Jinsong asks how long he's been there, and Jae-sung says about 3 days. He explains he went there because of the solar panels. Then he says he was installing them, but then the guys showed up. Jae-sung says that at first he put the panels on the lower windows, but the efficiency was awful, so he moved them up to the roof. Because of that, he'd been looking for a way to protect them from the snow with glass awnings, but luckily there are tons of materials around to work with. The main guy wonders if the warehouse has enough supplies, and the guy tells him the construction materials were well stocked, but when it comes to food, it's kinda hard to say. The girl asks if that's because the food storage is in section 2, and he says yeah, exactly. The roof collapsed under the snow, and he only managed to save whatever he could from that area. Luckily, everything was frozen, so the food didn't go bad, and once the power comes back, they'll be able to recover everything with the equipment. After that, Jinsong finally asks if it's really okay for them to stay there with him. The guy thinks about how in that world, making allies is basically the best move you can make. Suddenly, Jinsong admits he was about to ask the same thing, because after what happened at the gate, he realized he can't defend the place alone. Sooner or later, more people will come to the warehouse, and if he's by himself, he'll eventually lose it. Then he says this is the perfect time to team up with someone he can actually trust. After that, they notice the zombies are still at the entrance. The main guy gets curious about how their new ally got his weapon, and Jinsong says he took it from a cop who killed himself. Jinsong asks if there are any bullets left, but the guy says he used them all at the gate. The girl points out that at least the zombies will stop other people from trying to get into the warehouse. Suddenly, the main guy's stomach growls and he gets embarrassed, so Jinsong makes some instant ramen for his guests. The two of them practically light up when they see food, but he says the noodles still need to cook a little longer. To make things even better, Songa grabs the beers they'd stashed earlier. After a while, the meal's ready, and Jinsong gets emotional taking his first bite. The girl says the ramen broth is basically going straight into her soul. Then Jinsong stands up and suggests a toast, and the three of them celebrate their new alliance. A bit later, the main guy jokes that he'd forgotten what it feels like to be full. Then he says it feels amazing to have hot food and a place to rest, but they're still suffering because of the cold. Songa remembers the building has a heating system, but Jinsong says it's not working. So the guy asks if there's anything else they can burn, and his buddy says there's a brazier in the warehouse and they can use it like a stove. The main guy asks if there's firewood too, but the guy says he searched everywhere and couldn't find any wood. So the two start debating what they should use to make a fire. The girl says there's a forest nearby. Hearing that, Jinsong wonders if they should go grab the brazier right away and wait to collect wood until things calm down outside. As he heads down with the main guy, he mentions that disposable stuff like spoons and cleaning products was on the first floor. Jinsong thinks about how he can finally brush his teeth. He tells his buddy it looks like they won't have to worry about pots, kettles, and other kitchen stuff either. On the 5th floor, they find the office supply stockroom full of useless things like pencils and pens. Seeing Jinsong's shirt, the guy asks how the winter clothing stock is. Jinsong says there's a huge pile and they'll grab some as soon as they get the brazier. Then Four Eyes complains about the shoes he found there. They were way too big, so to make them work, he wore a bunch of layers of socks. Hearing that, the main guy opens his shop, buys a pair of boots for him, and asks if he wants to try them on. Jinsong puts them on and they fit perfectly, so now he's officially part of Jinsong's group. After that, the guys finally find what they came for. They each grab one side and start carrying it through the building. Halfway there, the main guy remembers Jinsong loves smoking, so the guy sets the brazier down on the floor and smiles, saying the warehouse is missing one specific item, making his buddy curious. Jinsong pulls out a pack of cigarettes and hands him a few as a thank you for the ramen earlier. The guy gets all emotional and tries to hug him, but the kid tells him to cut it out with the weird stuff. After that, the two of them head back and the main guy shows the coats they found, along with some face soap and a toothbrush with toothpaste. Seeing that, Song starts jumping around, super happy. Over the next 3 days, the group worked on improving the camp even more, like setting up the kitchen and a spot to store the mattresses. But they couldn't install the panels because the weather made it too risky, and they might break, so they decided to place them in an open area on the 5th floor instead. As time passed, the zombies started slowly spreading out. Then Jin Song says it's time to check outside. The kid says he's been thinking about that gun shop from before. Xiaona agrees they should go out, but makes it clear it's risky to go that far. The young guy thinks she's right, because they don't have enough coins to protect themselves from the zombies. Meanwhile, someone is riding a motorcycle through the streets, with a whole horde of undead chasing after them. Some zombies go after a guy who's only on a bicycle. Desperate, the cyclist runs up a staircase, getting an advantage over the monsters, since they can't climb up. At first, people thought that biker was just someone trying to escape, but he was actually leading the zombies toward areas where people were. The community users recognize the guy as a total bastard, because he's basically guiding a horde. With the camp finished, the group splits up to handle their roles. Xiaona is in charge of organizing the inside and taking inventory of the storage room. Jiao Song is responsible for bringing in info from the community and dealing with machinery stuff, like fixing equipment. The guy goes over to where the girl is and says he's been testing the generator, but he hasn't made much progress. Then she asks if he can help her organize the kitchen supplies stock. Meanwhile, the MC is doing his part, patrolling inside the warehouse, and he ends up meeting the others in the storage area. Jiao Song explains he's there because the weather isn't good for using the generator. The protagonist says he figured as much. Since the fog is so thick, the visibility is insanely low. Jiao Song says it's been a while since their last check outside. Right after that, out in front of the warehouse, Jiao Song is geared up in winter clothes with a bicycle. He asks why his friends are staring at him like that. The girl says she's worried about him going alone, but he explains his friends need to stay there in case someone tries to break into the shelter. Plus, he's got nothing to worry about, he has his spear. Then the kid gets on his bike, promising to come back with an induction stove and weapons. Jiao Song says he set up ropes so they can tie the stove to the protagonist's backpack. He thanks him and says he's heading out. One last time, the girl tells her friend to come back if things get too dangerous. Right after that, the kid starts pedaling down the street, thinking how nice it is to have Sona as an ally. Still, he decides not to let his guard down, since there could be zombies when he reaches the apartment complex. He gets to a school and realizes his destination is close. Then the wind picks up a lot, but luckily it's blowing against him, so the zombies won't catch his scent. Suddenly, Jin Song starts smelling exhaust fumes like it's coming from a wrecked car. Then he hears the sound of a motorcycle. Right after that, a horde of zombies appears in front of him. He realizes it's the same motorcycle that was leading the undead earlier. Jin Song starts pedaling like crazy, but he can't speed up because of the chains and the snow. He thinks he needs to find somewhere to hide, so he decides to go to the school he saw earlier. He gets to the door, but it's locked. Then he goes around the building trying to find another way in. He manages to open a window, but before he can climb in, a zombie grabs his leg. Trying to break free, he kicks the undead, but it still won't let go of his foot. So Jin Song pulls the spear from his backpack and stabs the zombie in the head. That finally frees his leg and he falls backward. But the zombie is still moving. Before it can do anything, the kid slams the window shut. He thinks about how he almost died and drops to his knees, saying that was exhausting. Meanwhile, Sona starts getting anxious and Jae Song asks if she's worried. The girl explains that the darkness outside is making her feel on edge. The guy suggests they use a phone, since he'd managed to charge it up to 8%. She gets curious and wants to know what the latest news is in the community. Online, people are talking about how the zombies can now smell blood. Right after that, Jae Song walks into a room that seems safe. And when he looks out the window, he sees a massive horde of undead. He figures the biker leading them must be the same one as last time. Suddenly, one zombie in the group catches his eye because it's over 2 meters tall. Reading about the monsters changing, Jae Song says things are getting way more dangerous. Then they see a post from someone saying the biker was leading zombies to places where people were staying in Banghak-dong. After reading that, Xiaona gets even more worried, because her partner was in that exact area. Jae Song grabs her arm and asks where she thinks she's going. And she says that at this rate, the main guy is going to run straight into that horde. And if he runs into them, there won't even be anything left to find. So she turns to leave the warehouse and go look for her teammate. But the guy says it's already too late. Xiaona asks what he means by that. Jae Sung explains the post warning about the horde was from the morning, and by now they've probably already reached the area. Then he says their priority right now is to fortify the place so the horde doesn't come through there. Hearing that, the girl decides she'll do whatever it takes to protect the warehouse. Meanwhile, Jae Sung hears a noise in the classroom next door and wonders if it might be another survivor he can team up with. But when he opens the door, he finds a zombified child. He gets the zombie's attention. It turns around and lunges at him, but he takes it out with a single strike from his spear. With tears in his eyes, Jae Sung apologizes to the child. After that, he keeps moving through the building, but there aren't any other zombies. Then he finds a spot to rest. He goes to the window hoping the rain and the zombies will be gone by the next day. Then Jae Sung lies down in his sleeping bag, wondering if the warehouse is okay since the horde is heading toward UI doing. After a while, he wakes up, and there are no undead outside anymore. He takes the chance to head to another school building, but finds the place completely trashed. He finds a few baseball bats he can use as weapons. Next, he goes to the kitchen and finds a zombie in there. No problem, he kills it and gets another coin. After that, Jae Sung finds a stove, but it isn't an induction one. He thinks about how nice it'd be to have a fridge or an oven, but either way it'd be really hard to carry. With no other choice, he decides to head into the city. Then he grabs his bike and rides toward his destination. But there are tons of zombies there, so he starts sneaking along behind cars. He sees the tall buildings and decides to go there. When he reaches the entrance, he finds broken glass and assumes there was a fight there. Still, he feels relieved because the place seems safe. Then he takes out his flashlight and heads up to the upper floors. A bit higher up, he finds a door, but thinks that if he forces it open, he might set off an alarm. So Jae-sung pulls out his sledgehammer and smashes the lock. Inside, it's a mess, but there's still no threat. Then he gets excited because he finally found an induction stove. He takes it apart so he can carry it. After a while, he decides to rest a bit. Jae-sung says he can't even remember the last time he slept in a bed. But right before he dozes off, he starts hearing noises. When he looks out the window, he sees some zombies climbing the building next door, which makes him think they're doing it for a reason. Then he realizes there's a person in the other building. Jae-sung thinks this is bad because the undead are all gathering in one spot. As embarrassing as it is, he knows there's nothing he can do, and besides, it's the perfect chance to escape since that person is distracting the monsters. Suddenly, a gun goes off, and it turned out it was the girl from the building across the way. The guy thinks about how bad this is because all that noise is going to attract zombies from meters away. That freaks him out because now he's basically trapped. An hour goes by and the girl keeps shooting without missing a single shot, taking down one zombie at a time. Watching that, the guy wonders if she's some kind of soldier. Then he gets annoyed he doesn't have her on his side, because he'd be farming a ton of coins. After that, he starts thinking maybe he should call out to her and try to team up. He'd have someone reliable and weapons too. Jin-sung gets tired of just watching and decides to wait, because either way it'll take at least a day for the zombies to scatter. But after a while, the protagonist wakes up and there's still a huge horde of undead out there. At least the girl seems to have stopped shooting. He regrets not leaving earlier, because his supplies are running low and now all he can do is wait. Right after that, he starts tossing and turning in bed, unable to sleep, since the zombies are heading toward the warehouse. To distract himself, he starts rummaging around the store. He ends up finding some random box that costs 10 coins. He says he needs to know what comes out of it to see if it's worth buying, but he still doesn't have enough coins. Suddenly, there's a massive explosion and the guy has no idea what's going on. Jin-sung notices the zombies are moving south. Seeing that, he decides to use the chance to finally get out of there. So he straps the stove onto his bike and heads out carefully. But right at the entrance, he runs into several undead. He wonders how he's supposed to take these monsters out. Before he can do anything, he sees the girl from the other building trying to leave too. All of a sudden, she signals that she's coming over to him. The blonde starts moving forward and a zombie crosses her path, but she drops it with her gun. Jin-sung is impressed by how she moves and wonders if she's actually part of some special forces unit. Then she reaches him, raises one hand and says she's not interested in fighting. Still, the guy stays uneasy because she doesn't lower her weapon. Right after that, she asks if he has anyone with him. With a gun hidden behind his back, Jin-sung says he's alone and that he doesn't want to fight either. Then they introduce themselves and the girl says her name is Sihyun. She says there isn't much stuff left around that apartment complex. While they're sitting there resting, she asks if he's been living alone. Jin-sung decides to lie for now since he still doesn't know if he can trust her. Then he asks her the same thing. Sihyun says she had a few military teammates with her, but they all died. After that, she explains they had a base near Banghakdong, but a recent horde showed up and she escaped on her own. She gets irritated and says it's all that biker's fault. Then Sihyun asks if he's got any destination in mind. He says he's heading to the gun shop, because nothing beats having something to protect yourself in this world. She asks if he knows how to shoot and he says yes. Hearing that, Sihyun hands her new partner a heavy gun. He asks if she's sure it's okay for him to keep it. She says it's fine, she's got plenty anyway. Jin-sung thanks her and says that's more than enough. Now that he's got weapons, Sihyun gets curious what his next goal is. He lies again, saying he's going to look for a safe place where he can settle down. After hearing that, she suggests he come with her, since it'll be better if they team up. Jin-sung figures maybe she just doesn't want to be alone, so he decides to use this chance to see if she's actually someone he can trust. After that, he starts following her as she takes out zombies along the way. Watching her, he thinks he really wouldn't want her as an enemy. After a while, they make it to Samkandong pretty quickly, thanks to her escorting him. Then Sihyun suggests they stop walking for a bit and take a break. Sitting in a restaurant, they chat about grabbing something sweet to get their energy back. After that, they get up to leave. The girl says finding food should be their top priority right now, and the main guy agrees. But before they can keep talking about it, someone starts shooting at them. Sihyun immediately runs to take a position and fire back, like she already knows who the shooters are. Seeing that, Jin-sung starts wondering if the enemies have some kind of grudge against her. He runs up to her and asks what's going on, but she stays silent and keeps shooting. It turns out the shooters are soldiers, and they tell someone named Kelly to surrender or she'll die. She doesn't stop firing, and the guy tells her to stop because she's going to attract a zombie horde. Sihyun says she'll never surrender because she can't go back to that place. Then she says those men did horrible things to her body, which completely shocks him. Jin-sung starts wondering if he can really trust her and what he's supposed to do. Suddenly, she grabs him and throws him in front of the bullets, saying she'll surrender. Luckily, none of the shots hit him. Trying to protect himself, he drops to the ground and says he doesn't want to fight. One of the soldiers signals the others to stop shooting. Sihyun sees the opening and tries to run, but she gets shot in the arm. Even injured, she keeps going, and some soldiers chase after her. Other men come up to Jin-sung and ask if he speaks their language, and he says yes. First, one soldier introduces himself as Brian, and asks if Jin-sung is Kelly's partner, but he says he doesn't even know who that is. Then the guy says the woman from earlier was Kelly. Jin-sung replies that she told him her name was Si-hyun. Right after that, he explains he met her a few hours ago, and they decided to team up. He also says Kelly told him the men did horrible things to her. Hearing that, the soldiers can't believe it because they say she was the one who betrayed them. She tried to steal food and killed one of them. Now Jin-sung doesn't know which story to believe. The men who chased Kelly report back that they couldn't catch her because the gunshots attracted zombies and made the search harder. Brian asks how many undead there were, and his men say enough to hold them up for a long time. After that, the commander comes over to Jin-sung and says he's going to trust him, and Jin-sung thanks him. Then the soldiers find Jin-sung's bike and think it's weird how heavy it is. Jinsong gets worried because at this rate he's going to lose his whole bag, so he steps forward and says the backpack is his. One of the men glares at him and says they found one of their group's guns. That makes Jinsong think they might not give his stuff back. But Brian walks up and hands him his backpack, saying he hopes Jinsong won't use what's inside it for anything bad. Then the soldiers leave, saying they hope to run into him again someday. Jinsong decides to grab his bike and head home too, but he runs into a problem. His bike got hit during the shootout. He picks up his portable stove and starts walking through the snowstorm. After that, he thinks it might be better to buy repellents just in case, since he still has 1.5 kilometers to go to the warehouse. When he opens the shop, Jinsong finds out he has 16 coins, and he has no idea how he got that many. He starts thinking he got all that money because of Kelly's kills, but it's weird because he never got any notification that they were in the same group. But the system is only counting Sana and Jae-sung as his teammates, which makes him think some zombies probably died at the warehouse. Then he remembers that horde from earlier. So Jinsong starts sprinting back to base, praying it's not too late. Meanwhile, a massive group of zombies gathers at the warehouse entrance, and Sana, along with Jae-sung, tries to hold them back any way they can. It doesn't take long for the creatures to snap one of the chains, sending the guy flying back. The girl grabs her partner and suggests they go inside the building, because there's no point trying to hold the entrance anymore. On the stairs, she arms herself and says that if the zombies manage to get in, they'll have to fight. The guy points out that even if zombies can't climb stairs, they can still come up from the slopes. She says they can last a while if they keep the undead funneled into a narrow spot. Seeing that her teammates still didn't have a weapon, Sienna tells him to get in position. But Jae-soon says they still have the option to just run for it. He starts heading down the steps, but she reminds him they all promised to defend the warehouse until Jin-soon came back. And he makes it clear he wasn't planning to ditch his friend, he just wanted to get out of there first and figure things out later. She says she can't do that, so she's staying at the base no matter what. Right after that, she lets go of him and tells him to stop thinking about running and just grab his weapon. At first he hesitates, but then he decides to stay too and see what happens. Then Sienna hears a noise and looks out the window and spots the biker. She thinks it's weird because the person feels really familiar. The guy takes off his helmet visor and she's shocked when she sees who it is. After that, the zombies manage to snap the chains and get into the warehouse area. Luckily, the door into the building is made of reinforced glass. Even so, the two of them take up attack positions, because they know the dead will break in soon. Meanwhile, Jin Seong takes out a zombie near the base, thinking it's probably just a straggler. Right after that, he runs toward the warehouse and finds the entrance wrecked. He refuses to believe the worst has happened. Inside, the zombies break through the glass and Sena is fighting them off, but she's starting to get exhausted. Jin Seong reaches the door and freezes at what he's seeing. Zombie bodies everywhere. He searches around and finds his friend's personal stuff, which means they didn't run. Panicking, he starts calling out for them but gets no answer. Then he reaches a spot the undead apparently didn't get past. He can't help thinking the worst, but he refuses to believe it. Suddenly, someone calls Jin Song's name, and when he turns around, his friends are right there. So the three of them finally reunite. Once they're somewhere safe, Senai explains the door held up pretty well, because it was reinforced glass, but they came up with the idea to make an opening. Thanks to that plan, they were able to defend the place pretty easily. And Jin Song even let his hero side show. Once enough bodies piled up, the other zombies couldn't get close anymore. In the end, they closed the door again, and after a while, the monsters disappeared. Jin Song asks what they were doing when he arrived, and she explains the gate had broken, so they went to grab some scrap to fix it. Hearing that, he says they really did work their asses off. Then he smiles and says he accomplished his goal. They set up the induction stove, and Jin Song says that should be enough to build a generator. Sana starts praising Jin Song, and it totally goes to his head. Then he shows them the weapon he managed to get. His friends get curious about where he even found something like that. He says they're gonna lose it when they hear the full story. After that, the group gathers firewood to start a campfire. Jin Song asks what they're gonna eat. Then Jin Song pulls out a huge pack of chicken for them to roast. Soon the three of them start heating it up and the smell drives them crazy. When it's ready, each one grabs their piece and takes the first bite, and they're all hyped because it tastes so good. After they've stuffed themselves, Sana says that in a way there's something kind of nice about this, because they don't have to worry about going to work anymore, and she doesn't even know if they'll ever go back to normal life. Jin Song asks if she's losing it because obviously they're going back. Then Jin Song says the only thing missing to make it perfect is an ice-cold beer, and Jin Song says next time they'll raid a beer factory. Suddenly the Four Eyes brings up the biker from earlier and says Sana got a good look at his face. She says it was someone they knew. Then she remembers the mess during her internship. There were 15 spots, but 16 people got in. That extra person was a guy named Min Tae. He had some perks, since he was the CEO's son. When Jin Song hears that, he's shocked to realize the psycho leading the zombies on the motorcycle was someone from their old company. Jin Song though says it can't be that guy, and Jin Song can't figure out what he's getting at. So Jin Song explains that Min Tae has an identical twin. They look exactly the same, but their personalities and the way they act are totally different. Min Tae was a total creep who was always getting mixed up in scandals. Meanwhile, his brother Min Song was super disciplined. He even got early admission to a science school and earned a PhD overseas. After a while, he came back to Korea after graduating and applied to the company. But that was the last time anyone heard from him. So Jin Song says their coworker probably saw the older brother Min Tae, but he doesn't rule out that it could have been the younger one. Because Min Song is a genius, he worked at the company, and it looks like he might be involved in all this. Still, the guys brush that idea off. Right after that, the protagonist asks if the girl is sure about what she saw, and she says yes, her eyes are sharp. So Jin Song decides they're keeping that info within the group. After that, Jin Song says something interesting popped up in the community. It was about the shocking truth behind the West Coast shelter, the same place the trio thought felt shady before. Apparently, someone posted photos proving it's actually a cult. The group's name basically means the destruction of the world. From the looks of it, they used that crowd to take over Incheon International Airport. Sano says the airport has tons of infrastructure, so it's way more livable than they expected. Chaesung wonders if he should start paying closer attention to this. The other guy says it's better not to get involved with religious groups because it'll be a headache if they end up clashing with some weird beliefs. Hearing that, he says he'll only filter the interesting stuff for the protagonist. In the morning, Chaesung goes to the busted gate and seeing how bad it is, says they need to do something about it. The protagonist says they'll have to fix it quietly so they don't draw attention. Then the two of them start making repairs. The guy collapses on the ground, exhausted because they've been at it for 6 hours. Chaesung says it looks like the repair is basically done. She also says adding a double gate was a really good upgrade. After that, Chaesung tells his coworker to go inside because it's getting cold, and she wonders if Chaesung did his part. Inside the warehouse, they find a brand new bike, but its real purpose is to work as a power generator. He says he set it up in front of the window so they can pedal while looking at the view outside. But the thing is, the bike uses kinetic energy through electromagnetic induction, and the protagonist asks him to explain it in a simpler way. Chaesung admits the machine's efficiency is terrible. He says if someone pedals for an hour to power an appliance, it'll only run for about 15 minutes. But he claims that if someone pedals for 30 minutes, that's enough to fully charge a phone. Sona thinks it's impressive. They've got another source of electricity besides solar power. Chaesung thanks him because thanks to that, they'll have a more stable power supply now. That night, the protagonist opens the shop window, thinking how great it'd be to find something that could help them protect the place better. Then he spends a coin to use the search skill and looks for equipment to prevent outside intruders, but finds nothing. Next, he searches for weapon, but still gets no results. Then he tries looking for a GPS tracker, and the skill finds something similar. It's a 24-hour location tracker, costing 7 coins. Chaesung can't believe it because with that, he can track a target or find his friends if they get separated, so he decides to buy it. Suddenly, Chaesung rushes in, freaking out, telling his friend to wake up. Within seconds, the trio is in position to defend themselves. Sana gets nervous because she's never fired a gun before. The protagonist calms her down, saying it's not hard, just aim and shoot. After that, Chaesung tells her she doesn't need to fire if the people try to be reasonable. Even though she's nervous, she says she gets it. He tells his partner to watch for Chaesung's signals. Then he peeks through a crack and sees 2 people approaching the warehouse. One of them looks like a kid. Sana says it looks like it's only 2 people, and there's no sign of anyone else. After that, the protagonist points his gun at them and tells them to stop. It's a man with a child. Chaesung asks them to identify themselves, and he says he's just a powerless old man traveling with his granddaughter. The boy gets curious about where they came from. The old man explains they've been wandering around with no real destination, running from zombies, and that their last shelter was completely destroyed. Right after that, the man asks for help, since the only weapon he has to defend himself is an axe. Sana asks if there are more people with them, and the old man says it's just the 2 of them. After that, the protagonist tells his teammate to hide and keep watch. Chaesung opens the first gate and tells them to come in slowly. Then he asks them to wait there, between the 2 gates. The girl asks what the problem is with letting them in, since it's just an old man and a kid. Chaesung says it's way too risky because they might look friendly, but this is a world where people can turn on each other in an instant. Then the 2 start arguing about whether they should let 2 strangers in or not. Meanwhile, Chaesung thinks neither of them is really wrong. Still, he says he wants to let them in. After that, he makes it clear he gets Chaesung's point, but right now they needed to increase the group's numbers. The boy adds that the old man looks pretty strong, even if he seems weak from hunger, and that he could help them clear debris. Plus, the child could help with guard duty. After that, they go to the gate and search the old man's backpack, and Chaesung says there's nothing suspicious. So the protagonist lets them in, and they bow, thanking them for the help. Once inside the building, Jin Seung asks when the last time they ate was, and the old man says about 10 days ago. Hearing that, the boy makes some instant ramen for the man and his granddaughter. After filling her belly, the little girl falls asleep, and Seung can't stop admiring how adorable she is. Then the young guy gets curious about how the old man and the girl even made it there. The old man says he used to live as a hunter in Gangwon-do, mostly taking down wild boars. Hearing that, the 3 of them realize he really isn't just some ordinary old man. After hearing his whole story, Seung gets emotional, saying it must have been really hard for him. The protagonist stands up, thinking there's honestly nothing weird or suspicious about the man's story. Then he holds out his hand and says they can stay there. The old man looks confused, because he thought they were going to kick them out at dawn. With a smile, Jin Seung says they need to help each other if they want to survive. Moved, the man starts thanking them and promises he'll do everything he can to help. Then he jokes that they can give him any job, because he's still strong even at his age. Even so, they let him rest for a full day with his granddaughter. But it was also a way to keep an eye on them a bit longer, since they still didn't know if they could trust them. On day 36 of survival, the old man says he's ready to work like everyone else, because he can't just rest forever. To keep the little girl busy, Jin Seung suggests she play around on the bicycle. Meanwhile, the protagonist goes out with her grandpa to gather wood, heading into a forest. The old man gets ready to chop down a tree, but the young guy tells him to wait. The old man asks what's wrong, and the boy says they can't cut down any trees, because the noise could attract zombies, and if other people see cut logs, they might figure out where they are. So Jin Seung says they'll just pick up branches off the ground, and the old man apologizes for the mistake. After a while, the backpack is finally full of firewood. While they're gathering wood, the old man says the protagonist must have been through a lot. Then he says that like the boy, his granddaughter also lost her parents when she was young. The young guy says at least the girl still has her grandpa. And the old man says Jin Seung right, and that's why he needs to live as long as possible for her sake. He just doesn't know if he'll make it until she's grown up. The protagonist says he's sure he will. After that, the boy thinks about how Byung-gyu is genuinely a good person and carries a huge sense of responsibility. When they get back to the warehouse, Byung-gyu jumps into her grandpa's arms and says she rode the bike for an hour. Jin Seung goes to his teammate and says he talked a lot with the old man in the forest and thinks they can trust him. Then he asks what he thinks about giving the man the rifle, because apparently he knows how to handle a gun. Even though he's a bit nervous, Jin Seung says he's fine with the idea. Meanwhile, the girl thinks her grandpa's hat looks weird because it's different from before. Still in the forest, Jin-seung gave Byung-gyu a new hat, hoping to bring him in as a new member of the group. At first, the old man tries to refuse, saying his old one was fine, but the main guy says the new one is way warmer, so the man decides to accept the gift and thanks him. Then a message pops up saying a new member has been added to the protagonist group, but as a consequence, the shop's prices will be adjusted. When he goes into the shop, the boy finds out everything costs 1 coin more. Back in the present, the guy feels sick just thinking about it, and his friend gets worried about what's wrong with him, but Jin-seung says he's just tired. That night, the protagonist takes a calmer look around the shop and thinks about how messed up it is. Then he realizes he can't just keep letting people join the group like it's nothing. Looking at the price of the random box, he complains because it used to be cheaper, but he buys it anyway. The box opens and gives Jin-seung a document with information. He grabs the paper, annoyed, wondering if it's really worth 11 coins. But when he opens it, he finds out what's inside is actually really good. After that, he starts thinking hard about what to do, because if what the document says is true, a lot of people are going to die in the future. The paper has 3 pieces of info, but the first 2 are totally useless right now. The problem is the last one. It warns that a blizzard is coming within 2 weeks. The next day comes, and the protagonist wakes up to Simeo running around like crazy. Jin Simeo is still kind of groggy since he didn't sleep well the night before. He kept thinking about the document. Right after that, he asks his partner what's going on. She says apparently a wild boar showed up during the night. The boy freaks out thinking the animal got inside, but the girl, totally calm, says it got stuck in the barbed wire. Then she explains that Jae Simeo was the one who reported it, and Byung-gyu confirmed it. Outside, the old man even took out a few zombies and got 2 coins for it, so the group goes to have breakfast, and Jae Simeo suggests building an indoor ladder, since there's no guarantee last night's situation won't happen again. Jin Simeo agrees since they need to be able to deal with anything that might climb the wall. The guy with glasses says he's thinking of building something like a medieval siege tower. Hearing that, the protagonist asks if he's sure, because it sounds complicated, and he says yes, because he's got a plan. After they finish eating, Jin Simeo says he has something to tell everyone, but he doesn't say anything about the window. He just suggests they start stocking up on food, and luckily everyone agrees. Jin Simeo and the girl go look for food while the protagonist and the old man go gather firewood. The two decide to go deeper into the forest to find more branches. It doesn't take long for Byung-gyu to say his backpack is already full. The protagonist says they can make a second trip to grab the rest. Suddenly they hear a weird noise and realize they're not alone in the forest. They both quickly get into a fighting stance, but the one making the noise is just a deer. The boy asks if a deer can even survive in temperatures like that. Byung-gyu says it's a rare sight considering the lack of food in the freezing cold. Then Jin-seung says he hasn't seen any animals at all so far, not even cats or pigeons in the cities. All of a sudden the deer starts staring at them in a strange way, and then charges at them. The old man quickly tells his buddy to stay back because he'll handle it. Then he drives his spear into the animal and uses a nearby tree to brace and keep the pressure steady. The deer drops to the ground, shaking. Byung-gyu checks the body and notices the deer is pretty fat, even with everything frozen over. Right after that, the old man takes a deep breath and says that wasn't all, because the deer wasn't the real source of the earlier noise. Hearing that, the protagonist gets scared and wonders if it was some kind of animal he knows. Then he suggests they leave the deer's body behind and head back. Back at base, Jae-sung admits that not seeing any animals since the apocalypse started really is weird. Sonar gets curious about what all of that means. Jae-sung has a theory, but if he tells her even though he isn't sure about anything, it'll just cause even more confusion, so he decides to keep quiet. Later on, some people in the community are making plans to travel together and the protagonist just keeps reading everything while his buddy pedals the bike. The kid wonders if people really post stuff like that now, and Jae-sung says yeah. Still, it's super hard for users to actually meet up since they're so far from each other. After that, the guy says the community is basically there for people to vent their positive thoughts. Jae-sung decides to stop pedaling for a bit and mentions the community's been more active these last few days, probably because more users have joined. The protagonist agrees and says everyone was just surviving wherever they were. Right after that, Jae-sung gets curious about whether the posts are totally anonymous, since users' names have numbers attached. The guy explains those are just temporary numbers, and after 24 hours they change. Some people even use images to identify themselves. Hearing that, the kid thinks maybe he can use the site well and get something in return for information. After a while, the protagonist goes back to the forest with Byung-gyu. The young guy asks if that's where they left the deer last time, and the older man says yes, but they think it's weird because they can't see the body anywhere. Jin-sung notices there aren't even any bloodstains on the ground. The old man is sure it didn't snow last night, which makes the protagonist even more curious about how the traces disappeared. After that, they find a rabbit on the ground, barely hanging on. Both its legs were hurt, but it was still alive. When they check the wounds, they realize the animal is going through zombification too, just like humans. And these weird signs in the forest, animals were showing up in other places as well. According to posts in the community, animals get infected by eating zombie meat, and just to be safe, the protagonist thinks it's probably not a good idea for them to eat meat for a while. Jin-sung thinks that's weird since deer and rabbits are herbivores, and Jin-sung asks if animals can't just turn into undead too, like humans did. Jin-sung says they still haven't seen any creature fully turned into a zombie, and the kid says he doesn't know why either, but tells them to avoid animals for now. Suddenly, Byung-gyu comes into the room asking to talk to the protagonist. The old man says they'll need to cut down trees, because there aren't any more branches on the ground to pick up. Jin-sung realizes they're running out of firewood too, so he says it looks like they don't have any other choice, and tells his buddy to grab the axe. But first he asks if Jin-sung can make another long-range weapon, and Jin-sung points out the protagonist already has a pistol. The kid says he needs something quieter so he doesn't attract a bunch of zombies. Jin-sung then asks if they can make a crossbow. Jinsong says just because her buddy is smart doesn't mean he can do everything. So the young guy tries asking Byung-gyu to make it, but even he can't build something like that. The protagonist takes a deep breath and says, yeah, looks like a crossbow is basically impossible. But Jinsong says it actually is possible. He says he's a military nerd who's always loved weapons and medieval armor, and that during summer break in college, he and his friends built a crossbow. Then he says he can make one, but it'll take a while to finish, because they don't have the right equipment. Hearing that, his friends say that's amazing. Then they head out, saying they're going to look for more supplies. Outside, Jinsong is chopping down a tree. After that, he sits down to rest for a bit. He says the trees are frozen, which makes the job even harder. All of a sudden, Byung-gyu shows up freaking out, calling for him. The protagonist asks what's wrong, and the older man says there's a village on the other side of the mountain, but something about it feels off. Then the two of them go up to a higher spot to get a better look. It looks like the place is a camp. Jinsong says it doesn't seem like there are many people there. Before they move in, he says he can see movement. It's two people carrying an animal, and Byung-gyu is shocked by how big it is. Pretty quickly they realize the boar is infected, just like the other animals. The older man wonders if they should warn them, but the young guy says no. They have no idea if those people are good or not, so it's better to watch a little longer. Back at base, the protagonist tells everyone about the camp near the cliff. Sona figures those people must be using some kind of tent setup with actual living space inside. The group realizes they can take a detour along the road to reach the camp, but on the other side of the forest there's a cemetery. Jinsong still doesn't rule out the chance they'll run into those guys. The girl meanwhile asks if the people over there also used to go into the same forest. The boy says that now they're basically forced to cut down trees, and if someone finds the chopped logs they can guess there are other people nearby. Right after that, Byung-gyu suggests they go up to the cliff the next day to take a look, since he heard she has really good eyesight. So the girl goes with the main guy on the next patrol and quickly spots 10 people at the camp. After that she says something feels off, because at first glance they look normal, but none of them had any expression. Jinsong says that's normal, and she's like, no, that's super creepy. 10 people just standing there with stone faces. On top of that, nobody was saying anything, and they were only moving like dolls. Back at the warehouse, Sina says the more she thinks about that camp, the scarier it gets. Then Aegu jumps into her lap, happy she's back. The girl asks if she had fun, and she says she rode the bike for like 2 hours. All of a sudden, the kid starts sniffing Sina-sa, which makes her wonder what's wrong. Aegu says her friend smells different than usual. Hearing that, Sina-sa asks her friend if she stinks, but he says no. The kid says Sina-sa usually smells like fruit, but this time it's kind of musty. And the same goes for the main guy. So the two of them start wondering where that smell came from. Aegu seems like she knows where it might have come from, but she decides not to say and just pulls Sina-sa away so they can eat. In the community forum, people are talking about the temperature going up and wondering if the ice age is finally ending. Reading that, the main guy realizes people are going to let their guard down, and then they'll get slammed by the blizzard. And at this rate, there won't be many survivors left. So with Jin Sinus, he decides to warn the community about the blizzard, and tells everyone to stockpile food in safe places. He feels a bit relieved for doing his part. Now it's up to everyone else whether they believe him or not. Going upstairs, he runs into Jane Sinus with Sinus, and they seem excited about something. They start talking about the rumors that the ice age is ending, but the main guy tells them not to get too optimistic, because in this world an avalanche can happen anytime. He says it's good to have hope, but they always need to be ready for the worst. He worries he might have sounded a little harsh, but he knows that blizzard is directly tied to whether they survive. Sometime later, Byung-gyu ends up getting sick from exhaustion because he pushed himself too hard cutting way too much wood, so the group splits into teams of 3 to go look for food. The next day, the older guy is already feeling better and goes to help with the food search, and they end up finding a crate of returnable bottles. After a while, Jae-sung calls the main guy over because he thinks he's seeing a person. At the gate, they actually do see someone, and just from their posture, they assume it's not a zombie. Jae-sung says it's probably not a group, since there's nowhere nearby for people to be living. Then they use the phone's zoom to get a better look, and realize the person is watching them. After that, the guy turns around and leaves. He says it's obvious they won't be able to stay safe for long, so Jin says they should move the supplies to base camp and store everything there. That night, Jae-sung calls the main guy over, and asks if he's ready for what he's about to see. The main guy says, yeah, since his friend seems really confident. Then the 4 eyes shows him the crossbow he built, saying it's a masterpiece. He warns it's just a prototype, so getting the exact angle with the sight is a bit tricky, but it shoots straight. After that, he says he's only managed to make 10 bolts so far. When the main guy picks up the crossbow, he says it's heavier than he expected, and Jae-sung says he did what he could to make it lighter. Right after that, he teaches Jin-sung how to prep the weapon. Then he tells the kid to do a test shot. But before he even gets the chance to fire, there's an explosion. While calming Aigu down, the girl realizes it came from the direction of that village. She quickly warns the others, and says she saw a flash go through the forest. Jae-sung wonders if they should head to the camp. The main guy, he answers no, because zombies from every direction are gonna follow the noise, and they'll probably pass by the warehouse on the way to the forest, and it'll be a lot of them. Right after that, everyone in the group takes up their defensive positions. Jin-sung warns them the dead are coming. The horde rushes toward the warehouse, but when they reach the gate, Sun-ah and the old man take them out. Then the protagonist notices there's a variant over 2 meters tall among the undead, and it's heading straight for him. The thing sprints to the wall, and the kid thinks that at this rate, they're gonna get overrun. Jin-sung thinks about how he didn't expect to have to test the crossbow beast this soon. Right after that, he fires, but the bolt flies way past the creature. Panicking, he starts reloading while the zombie climbs the wall. Seeing the variant right in front of him, the kid gets nervous. Still, he does everything he can to stay calm, because he can't let that thing get to the other side. After that, the protagonist manages to reload the crossbow and aims straight at the zombie, and this time he knocks the monster off the wall. leaving Jin-sung impressed by how powerful the weapon is. Meanwhile, another undead tries to jump the wall right in front of Jae-sung. At the gate, the pair keep dealing with the zombies using spears. Byung-gyu's spear tip gets stuck in one of the monsters, and when he yanks it out, he ends up falling backward, making Seona worry. The old man gets up saying he's fine and comments that apparently the variants have thicker skin or muscles, and the girl says she noticed that too, since it was harder to stab them and pull the weapon back out. A few hours pass and the protagonist has already used up all his bolts. Luckily, it looks like all the zombies have been taken out. Then the group regroups, and Jin-sung says the number of variants has gone up. Almost 1 in 10 was different. After that attack, the number of coins goes up to 24, and at this pace, the kid will be able to buy the second random box soon. Suddenly, a light flashes in their direction, and the young guy realizes it's a signal from Aigu, warning them someone's coming. Quickly, the protagonist tells everyone to get into position, while he climbs up onto a platform to get a better view. Someone is running toward them from the village. Apparently, the guy's unarmed and sprinting like his life depends on it. Jin-sung realizes he's out of bolts, but figures the crossbow is still enough to scare him off. The kid starts running toward the gate, but before he can get any closer, the protagonist tells him to stop, and says if he so much as moves, Jin-sung will shoot. Then he tells the guy to identify himself. Shaking with fear, the guy says he came from a village and barely made it out alive. The protagonist asks why he ran from the camp, and the survivor says it was because some crazy woman broke in. Right after that, a few zombies show up, probably followed him all the way from the village. Seeing them, the guy moves closer to the warehouse, begging them to let him in. Jin-sung tells him to stop coming any closer. He gets even more desperate, pleading to be saved. The protagonist wonders what to do because the guy is definitely going to die if he stays outside. Then he figures the only thing keeping this guy on his feet is sheer willpower, since the warehouse is far from the village. But the kid can't just let him in, because he could be hiding something. Next, the survivor threatens that he's coming into the base, and Jin-sung raises his crossbow saying he'll shoot if he tries. Trying to convince them, the guy says he'll tell them everything he knows. Hearing that, the protagonist thinks the guy probably knows more about the village, or about last night's explosion. The zombies start closing in faster. Even more terrified, the guy says he'll spill everything about the blonde woman. Jin-sung gets curious about what her hair looked like, and the guy says it was short. With that, the protagonist figures the woman must be Kelly. Then he tells Jin-sung to open the gate, but to stay on guard. The survivor immediately runs for the entrance, but halfway there, he trips, giving the zombies time to catch up. Jin-sung asks if they should help him. Jin-sung says no, they just need to be ready to slam the gate shut at the right moment. Meanwhile, the guy gets back up and starts running again toward the entrance. The protagonist worries that at this rate, he won't make it. After that, the survivor manages to jump inside to safety, and a zombie starts coming after him, heading straight for Sina. But before anything can happen to her, Jin-sung shows up and saves her. With the gate shut, the guy thanks them a ton for the help. Right after that, the main guy suggests they deal with the zombies at the gate, otherwise they'll just attract even more monsters. Inside the warehouse, Aigo almost gags from the new guy's smell. Her grandpa scolds her and tells her to apologize, so she does. And the guy says it's fine, since he ended up getting filthy on the way there anyway. Jin-sung asks whose blood that is, and the survivor says it's zombie blood because he figured the dead wouldn't recognize him if he smelled like them. After that, the main guy hands the young man a cup of tea, and when he blows on it, he makes everyone uncomfortable with his nasty breath. Jae-sung gets curious and asks what the guy's name is. He says it's Dong-gyu, and that he came from the village behind the mountain. Four Eyes then asks how he even knew about the warehouse. Dong-gyu asks if he can at least change his clothes before answering everything because the smell is already bothering everyone. Jae-sung tells him to follow him so he can grab some clean clothes. Seona says she'll come too, just in case. The main guy gives her a weapon to use if things go south. After that, the little girl goes up to the boy, and he asks where her grandpa is. She says he's in the bathroom. Then she says she has a secret to tell. Ego says that guy from earlier smells moldy, just like Jae-sung and Seona did when they came back from the forest before. After a while, Dong-gyu decides to tell them everything he knows. Where he was before, there were 15 people total, and since there were kids, they could barely loot convenience stores or markets. One day, he went back to his family and brought a lot of food with him. His wife and daughter are grateful for how hard he worked. That afternoon, the guy goes to take a shower, and when he gets out, he's happy there's hot water. Then, out of nowhere, an explosion hits the whole village. When Dong-gyu comes to, everything around him is gone and his leg is trapped. Even hurt, he gets up and goes looking for his family, but he ends up finding his wife and daughter buried under the rubble. When he gets closer, he realizes they're not alive anymore. That leaves him totally confused, not understanding what even happened. Suddenly, Dong-gyu starts hearing his neighbor screaming at some stranger, so he realizes there's an intruder in the village, and wonders if the person blew up a gas tank. Trying to protect himself, he grabs a stick and goes out to get a look at the invaders. Outside, he runs into someone he knows, but before they can even talk, the guy gets shot. Dong-gyu tries to help him, but it's already too late, and that's when he sees a blonde woman shooting people in the village. Seeing there's nothing he can do since she's armed, he decides to run. She even tries to hit him, but she misses. Right after that, he pulls something out of his pocket, something his daughter gave him, and her last request was that he survive no matter what. Jin-sung thinks the whole thing is weird and wonders why Kelly would attack the village, because he doesn't see any reason she'd do that, especially since it would just draw the zombies' attention. After that, Dong-gyu asks to stay in the warehouse for at least one day, and after that he'll leave on his own. The main guy tells him to rest for now, and that he'll decide later. Right after that, Dong-gyu shows up and gestures for Jin-sung to come talk. In another room, the older man asks how it went. The boy says the guy asked to stay just one day, but he says he feels uneasy, like the guy is hiding something. So because of that, he decided to check Dong-gyu's story. The old man asks how he's going to do that. Jin-sung says he's going to go take a look at the village. Meanwhile, Seona helps the newcomer set up a place to rest. Before leaving, the main guy tells his companions not to take their eyes off him. Sana apologizes to the man for not having a room for him, but he says it's fine. Right after that, Donggu comes in to switch shifts with her, and also stay close to the guy. Jaesong asks if Donggu's really okay sleeping on the floor, and he says it's actually pretty soft thanks to the sleeping bag. After that, the old man tells the woman to go get some rest, and says the same to the boy. But before they leave, he finds it weird that Jinsong isn't there. A little earlier, the kid asked his friends to come up with a story that matched his, so Sana makes one up, saying their friend had a stomachache. After that, she closes the door so the boy can rest. Outside, Byunggu and his teammates start standing guard in the hallway. Meanwhile, out in the forest, Jinsong's vision starts narrowing, probably because he's been walking all night. Right after that, he runs into a zombie, but he was basically expecting that kind of thing. So he decides to open the shop and buy deodorant to cover up his smell. Since he still has a few coins left, he buys the tracker too, spending 8 coins. Now with the tracker, all he has to do is picture his target. So he sets Kelly as the target and can see where she is. When he realizes it's only drawing a straight line, Jinsong figures the route isn't exact. Still, it's enough to find her. When he gets to the village, he finds everything wrecked, so he assumes at least that part of Donggyu's story was true. Spotting a tent, he wonders if Kelly's inside. Then he starts worrying she might be dead, since the tracker doesn't say whether the target is still alive. But he figures with her skills, she can probably survive, so he knows he has to go in and search. The problem is, the second he steps into the camp, he's basically dead because of how many zombies there are. He's not sure what to do, because at this rate he won't be able to confirm whether Donggu was lying. Suddenly, just as he's about to give up and head back to base, the tracker's needle moves toward the inside of the tent. Seeing that, Jinsong finally believes Kelly is alive in there. Right after that, the zombies get drawn away by a noise, and the kid can't tell if it was one of her allies or not. Even without knowing what's going on, he decides to use the opportunity to push forward. He sneaks through the rubble and grabs a grenade. Byunggu gave it to him. Turns out he'd been holding onto it from the start. The old man tells Jinsong to only use it if he really has to. Back in the present, the kid feels safer with the grenade, but hopes he won't need it. Then he sees a female zombie lying in front of him. But what's weird is there aren't any bite marks on the body. Next, he checks another corpse, and this one has bullet wounds, meaning it survived the explosion. And even though these bodies are out in the open, none of them have any zombie bite marks. That just makes Jinsong even more curious about what Donggu is hiding. Inside the tent, Kelly wonders how much longer she'll have to stay hidden. She heard some of the undead go after the sound of the motorcycle, but she doesn't know how many are still left. She's in a bad spot now because she's out of bullets and lost her spear. All she has left is a kitchen knife she grabbed before all this went down. Suddenly, she realizes someone has entered the room. The person walks right past where she's hiding, so Kelly decides she'll attack them from behind when she gets the chance. She wonders if the guy even knows she's there. Right after that, Jinsong tells her to come out, because he knows she's hiding up in the attic. With no other choice, Kelly gives up, raising her hands. She's confused about how he figured out where she was. Jinsong, though, isn't in the mood to chat and tells her to shut up. He's the one asking the questions. She says he can relax because she's not carrying anything. Then he tells her to turn around. She turns, and it turns out she's got the kitchen knife tucked at her waist. Jinsong tells her to take it out and toss it on the ground. With no choice, she does exactly what he says. After that, she apologizes for what she did in the past, and says she was only doing it to survive. Kelly asks if he wants something, but again he reminds her who's in charge. Then he asks why she attacked the village, and why she killed people who seemed innocent. She laughs and says the people in that village were anything but human. After she split up with him, she came to this area thinking she'd find something to eat. But the villagers were eating the undead. A month has passed, and every villager was turning into a zombie. Not in the sense that they were infected, but yeah, for acting like them. Almost like they couldn't feel human emotions anymore and just hunted, ate, and sometimes stared off into nothing. On top of that, their bodies started to smell like rot. Maybe that's why the zombies didn't attack them, which basically made the undead easy prey. Kelly says that's why she attacked them, because those people managed to be worse than the zombies. The girl tells the guy to go to a well at the entrance of the village, where there are human bones at the bottom. Right after that, she asks why the protagonist is so shocked, because in this world there aren't any good things left. And now that the law has collapsed, the world is full of horrible people who think they own everything. After that, she says Jinsong should be grateful, because she knows about the warehouse and how many people were there, including a child. But he chose to ignore it and attack this place instead. After telling him everything she knows, Kelly asks the guy to lower his weapon, since she's cooperating. Meanwhile, the zombies start heading toward the cabin. She asks how long he's going to waste time, because the monsters are coming. Suddenly, an undead barges in. With no other choice, Kelly grabs her knife and runs upstairs. The zombie charges at her, but she kicks it hard. Without wasting time, she takes it out. But because of the noise, more zombies get drawn in. Kelly rips off a piece of the staircase to use as a weapon, even managing to knock a few monsters down the stairs. But a lot more undead have already shown up. She grins and says this whole situation is driving her crazy. After a while, she keeps fighting the creatures. In one of her moves, she swings around the side of the stairs and flying kicks a zombie right in the face. Another zombie tries to take the chance to bite her, but Kelly dodges and immediately locks her legs around it, taking it down. After that insane fight, she sits on the stairs and takes a deep breath, exhausted. Jin Seung shows up again, saying he's impressed she managed to kill 6 zombies by herself. She asks how the zombies weren't attacking him. The guy points his gun at her and says he has his tricks. Seeing that, Kelly asks why he's doing this, and with a dark look he says she probably knows the real reason better than anyone. Because right now a possible threat has been spying on his base and his fighting strength, so he can't afford to let someone like that stay alive. After he finishes Kelly off, the tracker gets deactivated, and since there were still more than 6 hours left on it, 3 coins would be refunded. When he goes to the well the woman mentioned earlier, Jin Seung realizes her story was completely true, and decides to head back to the warehouse. On the way, he ends up taking out several undead, but more are already coming after him. Seeing how this road is packed with zombies, he figures his only option is to take an unfamiliar path. After a while, he manages to lose the zombies, but even so, he knows he has to be careful, because he doesn't know this area. He decides to spend 2 coins to buy a deodorizer and hide his scent. Jin Seong thinks about how he needs to find somewhere to take shelter, because his body temperature is dropping. After that, he finds a path and decides to follow it, and runs into a building. It's a restaurant, and he thinks it's the perfect place to rest. Inside, he finds an open door and decides to go in. But in the room, he comes face to face with a zombie. The undead lunges at him, but he blocks it with his baton. Then he boots the monster, sending it flying back, and he finishes the job, killing it. He breathes a sigh of relief because he barely escaped death. But as a result, his baton is destroyed and he won't be able to use it anymore. With no other choice, he decides to buy the zombie skull-crushing hammer, but the item is limited to only 10 uses. Seeing that, Jin Seong gets disappointed and wonders if that durability isn't basically a scam. With everything handled, he decides to go rest, but first he needs to get rid of that zombie's body. But something catches his attention. On the undead's clothes was his company's logo. He says he feels bad, since that person used to be a coworker. Then he finds it weird that the employee ended up so far from the company, but he decides to ignore it and just take the clothes to protect himself from the cold. As he looks around the place, the main guy starts wondering if that dude had actually been living there. He figures the guy probably went out to get supplies and came back infected. Jin Seong finally sits down, since it looks like there aren't any other zombies around. He decides to rest a bit, because he hasn't slept in over 30 hours. But before that, he throws on another layer and ends up feeling something in his pocket. Turns out it's a diary. In it, a scientist writes that one of the lab rats in his experiment was acting weird, and when he reported it to his boss, the guy reacted like he'd been expecting it. The test subjects were getting more aggressive, and at the same time, the director's business trips started happening more and more. When the whole apocalypse kicked off, the scientist boss ordered him to go to Seoul, and even though he was nervous, he did it. The man says he'll expose everything when it's all over, and the protagonist gets curious about what that even means. After that, the kid thinks it probably has something to do with the current outbreak. He notices one of the pages was torn out and wonders what was on it. The ink had frozen, so there were just scribbles all over the place. He thinks the one responsible was probably the director's second son, and the first son was the troublemaker who'd been drawing zombie hordes in. So the protagonist admits there's definitely something shady going on with that company. Jin Seong decides to hang on to the diary for now and get some rest because his head is already pounding. After a while, he gets ready to leave, but he plans to come back later and see what else was hidden there. For now, his priority is getting back to the warehouse, because Dongyu is definitely a threat. He gets back to base and immediately runs into his teammates. He's pretty relieved, since apparently nothing bad happened. Jin Seong asks where Dongyu is, and Sana says he's been sleeping. She adds they haven't had any trouble with him since he's been out for the last 10 hours. Jin Seong wonders where Jae Song is, and Byung-gyu explains he's taking a break. Right after that, the group goes into Dongyu's room with weapons drawn and tells him to wake up. He gets up all groggy and asks why everyone's armed. Jin Seong says he found out he was lying. He tells him he went to that supposedly peaceful village and found out what they were eating. All of a sudden, Dongyu's expression changes, and he asks what the problem is. He had to survive somehow. Then he says he'd do even worse to keep his family fed. Seeing that the guy doesn't feel even a little guilty, Jin Seong decides there's no choice but to kick him out. Dongyu tries to argue, saying the situation forced him to do it. Then Jin Seong points out that Dongyu lost his wife and daughter, but still slept peacefully for 10 hours. Dongyu says that in this world, the best thing is not letting emotions take over, and in their current situation, that kind of evolution was good for survival. Even so, Jin Seong's group won't accept it and tells him to leave, while he calls them crazy because he thinks he's going to die. Jin Seong says the man can't even call himself human anymore, because down in the village, well, he even saw small bones that were probably from kids, and in a way, Dongyu was gradually turning into a zombie, because his emotions were disappearing, and even the zombies weren't attacking him. Dongyu says the dead were chasing him when he got there, but Jin Seong says he lured the monsters on purpose to get them to open the gate. Hearing that, Dongyu gets pissed, saying Jin Seong had been planning to investigate him from the start. Then Jin Seong points his gun at him and says if he won't leave the easy way, he'll leave the hard way. Dongyu's body starts to warp, and he says he'll never accept being kicked out like that. Seeing it, Jin Seong thinks about how the guy was turning into a variant. Before things get worse, Dongyu takes the monster out, killing him. And just like with a zombie, Jin Seong gets a coin. He's shocked the system counted Dongyu like he was actually one of the monsters. After that, the older guy apologizes. He doesn't know how the others will see what he did, but he wasn't going to let a possible threat stay alive. Jin Seong says it's fine because he made the right call. Then he admits that yeah, that guy would have caused a huge problem later. Suddenly, Jin Seong remembers a line in the diary about different kinds of zombies. It says variants are created under specific circumstances, like environmental factors and people. Reading that, the boy realizes that maybe eating zombie meat could be enough to create a variant. After a while, the main character goes to Aegu to talk about the smell she noticed earlier on that guy. He asks if it was the same scent she smelled on him and on Sana the other day, and she says yes. Jin Seong gets curious about whether she smelled it before, and she says only once. It was the village chief who had this musty smell. The boy asks if Byung-gyu knows who that is, and the old man explains it was a guy who got bitten and infected, but hid it. He was bitten on the arm, but he cut off the blood flow and managed to slow the infection down. Even so, he still turned into a zombie days later. Knowing that, Jin Seong starts to believe Aego can tell who's infected. Right after that, he thanks her and asks her to let him know if she smells it again. 3 days before the blizzard, the cold gets worse and Jin Seong seems like he's coming down with a cold. The main character says the weather outside must have dropped back to below 30 degrees Celsius, and Jin Seong gets bummed because up until a few days ago the weather had been getting better. Seinar says everyone in the community is talking about the cold. Jin-sang feels relieved they stocked up on more supplies during that time. Right after that, Jin-sang says they need to go out and protect the firewood. So the group decides to go together into the forest, because if they split up, they could end up getting caught by zombies. After a while, Jin-sang tells the main character something felt off about that company zombie, because the person got bitten and decided to lock himself inside a room. But according to his diary, he didn't seem like some love humanity type, much less someone who'd just give up on everything. Hearing that, the boy says his friend has a point, and he asks if someone else locked him in there. Jin-sang says it's possible, and Jin-sang decides to keep that possibility in mind. But if that's true, he doesn't see any reason not to take the notebook. Jin-sang says they can go back there later, and look for more clues. Some time passes, and Jin-sang complains about how they're not eating any meat. After that, he asks Byung-gyu if he's hunted anything besides wild boars. The old man reveals he once took down a tiger when he was younger. But Jin-sang thinks that's weird because tigers have been extinct on the Korean peninsula for centuries. The old man says records aren't everything in this world. Jin-sang walks up to the main character joking that the group acted like a family. While the others keep arguing about the animal, the boy admits it did feel kind of familiar. She's happy about how close they are and hopes it stays that way. Jin-sang meanwhile can only think about the blizzard that's supposed to hit soon. One day before the blizzard, they start reinforcing the windows. The main character explains that if the temperature drops even more and the windows freeze over, they could crack from even a small impact. Night falls and everyone's lying down, resting. Except Jin-sang, he's waiting for the blizzard. Some time passes and nothing happens, which makes him think maybe that random box was wrong. Not even the community is talking about any blizzard. Another 50 minutes go by and it's almost time for his rest shift. So he gets up to call Byung-gyu so they can switch turns. But before that, a sudden barrage of lightning starts, meaning the blizzard was finally starting. After a while, Byung-gyu wakes up along with the others and says a storm like that won't be over in just 1 or 2 days. After that, the group thanks the main character because if he hadn't told them to reinforce the storage shed, they'd be screwed. Jae-sung asks if his friend read the post, and the boy looks confused. Jae-sung says that a while back someone posted a warning in the community about the blizzard. Jae-sung gets nervous, but at least they didn't suspect anything. Meanwhile, the others try to convince Jae-sung that internet stuff like that isn't real. The group's phone can barely pick up a single signal at best. Right after that, they find out the whole country is like this, and apparently the temperature dropped to -40 K. Jae-sung says he's going outside to see if it's really that bad. Jae-sung tells him not to just go out like that. To make it easier, they bundle him up in jackets. Jae-sung tells his friend to only check the temperature and come right back, because the winds outside were seriously dangerous. After that, the guy steps outside and goes over to a thermometer, and he's shocked by what it says. Then he comes back and says the temperature was -46 degrees. Shivering like crazy, Jae-sung says this situation is on a whole different level. The main guy asks if his buddy knows the freezing point of LPG, and he says it's -42 degrees. So Jae-sung says they need to move everyone up to the second floor, and in the meantime his friend should rest and warm up. After that, they gather up a bunch of LPG cylinders. The kid tells Aigo to be in charge of making sure the temperature never drops below -42 degrees. After a while, Seona says that with the weather like this, it'll be hard to hold out for long. Jin-sung says everything will be fine soon. In the letter from the mysterious box, it said a blizzard was coming, so it'll probably pass one day. A few days go by and the snow and wind calm down, but the temperature stays the same, so they'll have to hang on a little longer. Jae-sung says the number of new posts has dropped a lot. The main guy says it's probably because a lot of people didn't make it, and he heard that a bunch of buildings collapsed. 2 more days pass, and the group has enough food to last about 2.5 weeks. Suddenly, Byung-gyu shows up freaking out, saying people are coming toward the warehouse. When they look out the window, they see a group of soldiers. They quickly take up defensive positions. Jae-sung tells the soldiers not to come any closer, and says only one representative can come in. One of the men steps forward. The main guy wonders if they really walked all the way there. Just in case, he hides a weapon in his jacket. But before he even gets the chance to use it, he realizes the soldier is actually Brian. Brian looks shocked that the kid managed to survive. Jae-sung smiles and says, yeah, the world really is a small place. The soldiers relax a bit, since it looks like the two of them know each other. Right after that, Brian says they couldn't find Kelly and ended up losing her trail while heading north. So the main guy tells him she's dead. Hearing that, Brian asks if he's sure, and the kid says he saw it with his own eyes. After that, Brian gets curious and asks if the kid's been living in this warehouse. Jae-sung says yeah, with his friends. Then Brian says their shelter got destroyed. They did some repairs after the blizzard, but realized it wouldn't hold up for long, so he asks if they can stay at the warehouse for a while. The main guy isn't sure what to do. Everyone looks weak from not having enough food, and if he turns them away, they'll probably all die. But the problem is the warehouse food won't last that long either. Jae-sung also considers that if they block the soldiers from coming in, the soldiers might just attack, even without knowing what the main guy is thinking. Brian says they won't force their way in if they're refused. That surprises the kid. Brian's basically promising he'll stay human. Right after that, he tells Brian to wait, because he's going to talk it over with the others. Sena is against it, because if they take in more people, their food will last at most a week. Jae-sung votes yes, because with the military there, their firepower would go up. Then the main guy asks Byung-gyu what he thinks, and Byung-gyu says they should take them in. They're just young guys stranded in another country, but even so, they're still trying to hold on to their humanity, and he wants their group to do the same. Hearing that, Jae-sung says that this time he wants to do something the kind way. So they let the soldiers into the warehouse and immediately give them a pot of soup. Their eyes practically light up from how good it tastes. One woman complains her ankles hurt, and to help, Seona gives her an ice pack. Pretty quickly, the group becomes friends with the soldiers, learning how to shoot and how to maintain weapons. Seona also gets really close to Jessie, since she's the only woman in the unit. Even Byung-gyu becomes friends with a soldier who can speak Korean because of an old girlfriend. Aigo gets gifted a pair of binoculars, and when she tries them, she's amazed she can see things far away now. And that's how the days went by, full of happiness and peace, but nobody was expecting what would happen next. One night they notice a weird glow outside. Brian says it can only be fire. Hearing that, the main guy freezes, and Brian gets curious why he's reacting like that. Jinsong, on the other hand, says the building that was on fire was where they kept the food supplies.